My best friend is gone because of you and your stupid racism. I hate you.
Something about hearing Justin say that's really funny. Wonder if Static Shock is available to stream anywhere. June 10th. We have 9 days left until Fall Guys is out of here again. I don't want to get started on the things just yet, so I will do things. So let's get some hunting in. And since we're hunting, that means we can watch some videos. I feel like. Excuse me. I miss the Crystarium. Bruh, me too, honestly. Like, me personally, I have a big soft spot for the Crystarium. I mean, I feel like people love the Crystarium, but like, I have an especially soft spot for it because I love Final Fantasy III. I mean, like, I played a terrible version. I played the DS one as a kid, and that was my first Final Fantasy game. But like, man, I miss it. I should stream the... Because I have the HD 2D remakes of 1 to 3. So I should play those someday. Is the DS version terrible? It's the only one I've played. It's not the worst version, no. But, like, the difficulty was not made that much less. Also, you get the fucking... as some Call Me Johnny calls it, job sickness, where you have an adjustment phase between switching jobs, which was not in the original. And I don't think it's in the HD 2D remake either. Anyway, we're gonna go hunting, because my partner's like out of the house and like isn't really here to hang out. So we're gonna hunt first, which means we got stuff to put on in the background.
I wanted that shirt. We're gonna continue searching E3. We're trying to rekindle the childhood magic in the last. We have 30 minutes.
It's loud.
Hello and welcome back to Video Games. I'm Tim Rogers, coming to you live, pre-recorded, from Electronic 3 2019 for Kotaku.com. And it's the end of E3. We've done a whole bunch of videos where we've recorded a whole bunch of videos, which we then have to edit later. Not going to think about that right now, but I'm going to think about that the second this camera's turned off, because this is the last video we are making at E3. The last E3 ever, by the looks of this meeting room. Is E3 dead? No. That's not even the nature of this video. We're just gonna have fun in this video. This is the emptiest I have ever seen E3.
This was from 2019, so yeah, no. E3 did die. He was a little too on the money with that.
And I have been to 18 E3s. Long ago, when you went to E3, you were guaranteed a free goddarn beverage every 5 steps. Now, they were terrible beverages, taste like jet fuel, lighter fuel, god darn dog urine, lion blood, jaguar milk. I mean, this stuff tasted disgusting. Just these battery acid-like cans of energy drink. And I want to know, where the heck is that anymore, huh? Where can I get a god darn energy drink at Electronic 3? Let's try to find one. I think there's one over here, because I'm gonna die. Long ago, for me, E3 was how I got into the video game industry. First of all, there's a sign out front that says no one under age 17 admitted. That was like a 12-year-old, number one. Number two, he was drinking a Red Bull. Speaking of energy drinks, what are they feeding the kids now? E3 for me has always been about weird stuff. There used to be a whole hall called Kentia Hall that was just full of weird stuff. And at that time, it was like Malaysian game publishers, Indonesian game publishers, Korean game companies, people making weird hardware, little stuff. And now video games are so big, there's even more weird hardware. I'm not necessarily saying Black Shark is weird hardware, but I mean, it turns your phone into a Nintendo Switch. It has a cooling wafer? What? Cooling wafer? I witnessed for the last 3 days, every time I crossed by this zone, a hullabaloovian brouhaha of show attendees jostling one another, grappling for position to obtain a free energy drink before their peers. Now the line has gone, but the drinks remain. And I was born stupid, I will not die hungry, and I definitely won't die thirsty because I might die when I drink this, but we're gonna drink it. It's called Bang. In its marketing and branding, it really brings me back to the old energy drinks. They used to give out NOS out in front of E3, and they had dancing girls in bikinis, and you would get NOS out of a big barrel full of ice. Hello, can I have...
I miss NOS. I miss NOS, and I miss Venom. I don't know if they sell... I know they sell NOS in places. I don't know if they still sell Venom anywhere.
One of these. I'm excited for floating in the hotel pool tonight, face down. This one's got CoQ10.
All of them have CoQ10, but this one has no caffeine.
Does any one of them have CoQ11? Can I have one with 0 sugar? They all have 0 sugar. In the vending machine in my hotel, as I woke up from 2 hours of sleep, I went to get an energy drink because I thought I would die if I did not. And all they had in the vending machine was the Monster with the sugar. All they had in the vending machine was some other energy drink with sugar. Like 4 varieties of it was sugar. And I was mad. So is one of these like a lemon limey flavor? This will fuel my destiny. Like, how nuts is this gonna make me? Because I gotta fly a plane tonight. What's the #1 most popular one?
I don't know. They're just like, there's so many good ones. We have like over 20 flavors. Over 20 flavors.
So you've been here for all 3 days. People are they just streaming by, just grabbing them? Just grabbing them and running away?
It is one of the most popular.
This is much colder.
It's like meant for you. I think that's like the one that you need to take.
I need something cold. I need to cool my blood down. My blood is too hot right now. I gotta freeze my blood before it gets back to my brain. Thank you. This is ice cold. So now that I've waited in line and wasted some people's time debating which of the flavors was the best, I have to do the grown-up thing and drink this Froze Rose Bang. What do you think?
I think that you need to get on one knee and chug it. Not just drink it, you need to chug it.
Chug it.
Which knee?
Your left knee.
That's my bad knee, but I'll do it. I'm just kidding. I don't have a bad knee, but I will after this. This knee? Okay. It's open. Couldn't do it. My throat seized up. It's so cold. It's so cold.
You killed it. You did awesome. It's amazing.
I killed it, but it wasn't a headshot. It's time to go back to my airplane and fly it cross country. This is gonna take me up to Mach 6. I shouldn't have drank that fast. That was irresponsible. Thank you. Bang energy drink. Fuel your destiny? Oh yeah. I feel all right. I'll tell you what, I don't feel dead. But then again, nobody who knows what it's like to feel dead is alive to talk about it. Now we're going back to what I call the pocket. It's this rear corner of the South Hall of Electronic 3. Here in these numbers that mean something maybe at a gun show or a knife show. 2600, 2700, 2800, 2900. You're going up to the upper 2000s now in booth space. Obviously somebody like Nintendo or Square Enix isn't gonna display their booth number. Here, however, it's different. I'm gonna try to sit in a chair without attracting a PR person. Start the timer. We're gonna see how long it takes for a representative of this corporation to come up and begin talking to me about the chair. I mean, I like my steel case Leap. I feel like it's got a little bit too much butt action. Like the butt zone is like real, like it's just got too much butt action. There's too much under it. I need it to feel like I'm being suspended, bounced in like a hammock of a sort. Not like I feel like I'm sitting on a luxurious floor. Did I tell you all about this? I didn't tell anybody about this on the video. I've been keeping this only to my close friends, but you know what? If you're watching this, you're my close friend. I hurt my neck in that goddarn Fortnite booth earlier. I got in that stupid bouncy castle trampoline thing. I jumped, I like hit my head on the, you know, luxurious padding, the balloon side, and I cricked it. You know what I mean? I cricked it. And I'm gonna wake up, it's gonna be sore tomorrow. It feels weird now. I've had a sore neck before. You know what? You know what I'm talking about. If you sit down now, when are you going to get up? Probably not for the rest of the night, is what I'm thinking. Been on my goddarn feet all day. I'll tell you what, though, with these Nike Vapor Max Plus shoes I'm wearing, it's like sitting for my feet. Gaming Outfitters. It's kind of like Urban Outfitters for gaming. Look at this emptiness. You see this? You ever need to take a nap at E3, you can do it over there. I mean, or you can get in one of these chairs. You notice the free seating at E3 is always taken. There's always people in the seating. Look at this. There's this guy over here. He's got his leg just draped up over the arm of the chair like he's a billionaire at home. Like he goddarn owns the LA Convention Center. Super Hiv Man, streetwear. I like it. How good is it? Is it better than this handmade jacket that was made in Japan by a company that purchased U.S. military's dead stock equipment in 1957, heavy nylon? I drank this and I'm freaking out. Yeah, this actually is a good-looking jacket. All right, let me try on a jacket. What do you recommend for me? Can I get something black? We're going to try on something black. What size we got? 39. Ooh. All right. Oh, this is good. Yeah, pop it as hard as it goes. All right, let's kill.
So that's based on Devil May Cry 5 on Dante's coat, but it's his alternate color scheme, which was based on DMC.
The fuck
How
did
much
we
is
do?
this?
L friend, L racism, L hate.
Hello, Shadow. No, Justin was quoting Static Shock. It's the episode, I was gonna say the racism episode, but there might be a few. The one with Richie's dad being a racist, and Virgil's like, I'm just gonna go home. Actually, see you later. And then Richie gets pissed and yells at his dad. He's like, my best friend is gone because of you and your stupid racism. I hate you. It's really funny that you got fooled into thinking that was real. Man, I gotta check. I gotta see if was he supposed to be gay? Yeah, Richie is gay. Which ooh, gay and your best friend's black? Ooh, like his dad's gonna hate that.
525.
525. I need to test the pocket action. Okay. Good pocket action. This is good. It goes with my stuff. Not exactly dressed like Dante, but
Happy birthday month. Thank you. I will be putting out an announcement video tomorrow to, I was gonna say further explain the plan this month, but like, you know, it's not even really like that much info you need. It's like hey, here's what we're doing on the birthday, you know, stuff like that. We don't have the money for the saxophone because updating the model is expensive, you know? Who could have guessed? Stuff like that. I do say in the video, like, you know, if you want to donate money so I can buy a saxophone so I can play the music for you, I wouldn't say no. I'm not asking you to, but it'd be cool if you did. You're still sick just in time for your birthday. I'm not sick. I had COVID. I don't know if you know, but like when you get COVID, it kind of fucks you up a little bit. Like, I'm gonna be like this for a while. I'm not suffering or anything. It's actually more annoying than anything.
I like it. I mean, I'm not joking around. I like this. This is good.
We work hard, you know.
I can tell. Well, I'm gonna take this off now, much as I don't really want to.
I'm a big fan, by the way.
Yeah, I believe you DM'd me on Twitter.
I did.
I was gonna say, what else do you have that's black?
Just about every one of our designs comes in a black color scheme because why not? This one's a prototype. This is in development right now, so I'm wearing it out, trying things, seeing how it goes. This is a water-resistant ballistic, or what do you call it? Aviator nylon. So nice, similar style, obviously. This is a new thing for us. Generally, we use all cotton materials, so it's got a nice heavy weight. It's super durable, but it's something that's breathable. You can wear every day.
I love jackets. Jackets are my favorite. They're my favorite article of clothing.
I'm right there with you, obviously. I mean, I run the business. I started.
You had COVID, but now you're still coughing like a... Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you have COVID, like in the past tense, when you had COVID, when you are a person who had COVID, like it stays with you, the effects of it, which includes sort of weak lungs, weakened lungs. Your lungs are now a little more weak than normal. That's like the bare minimum, though. Like, that's like the bare minimum of what's it called? Symptoms. You're lucky to get out of it with that.
A jacket company, because I also love jackets.
Thank you for letting me try the jacket. I like that jacket. That jacket fit very well. It did not. E3 is disappearing before our eyes. Last year we came here to the Pocket and I tried on a comically large backpack that could hold an entire giant BC tower case. Right here, I tried it on. Crazy gear. They told me it was pronounced crazy gear. They never met their funding goal on Kickstarter, and I feel like my video failed them. And then this year, we come here, and instead of a great, hilarious joke, I just try on a jacket, and I say, I like it. This is good. I've grown up between 39 and 40. It really happened. I didn't make fun of anything. Oh my God, 5-hour tea? I got a 5-hour energy tea with green tea leaves. The 5-hour energy people were not allowed to be on camera. I suppose they had a corporate mandate. What are they afraid of? Probably, I mean, I don't really want to be on camera either, but it's my job. Rule is, free drink, I gotta drink it. So here it comes. Should I go down on one knee to chug? Ooh, that smells good, actually. It smells like tea. No matter how many times I feel like I drank that once and I swallowed it 4 times. No matter how many times I swallowed, the sweet, sweet stench remained. And it was good. That was actually good. That tasted good. I've now had the equivalent of, let's take a look at the milligrams here. Don't be alarmed. I have to take my sunglasses off in order to read. It's 200 milligrams. 200 milligrams of caffeine. So I've now had 450 milligrams of caffeine. That's equivalent of about 2 3/4 cups of coffee. We're gonna go ahead and see what else I can get. We've just like organically run into Paul Tamayo here.
Hello, everybody.
Do you see this? I'm not gonna lie. It is a goddarn mundane world we live in. More than 99% of the stuff that happens on Earth sucks. And it's boring. And you can make VR about goddarn anything. You can make VR where you're a goddarn 4-year-old child who can fly at 800 miles per hour through a shopping mall or whatever. That's just off the top of my head. If you can think it, you can make it. Somebody made goddarn VR beer pong. Might as well make VR taking a dump, I guess, is what's the joke I was going to make. But actually, it seems like it actually might be a genuinely interesting application of VR and motion controls and room scale. I'm just riffing here. I'm just going to say it. This is a bench. These gamer chair companies really think they can fool me. This is a goddarn bench. Like, this is like a park bench, sort of bench. And they're probably selling this for what, like $900, talking about its lumbar support. It's actually not bad. I'm now thinking about it. Like a bus stop bench has slightly better lumbar support than a sofa. Civic engineering, they want to try to make you have better posture. At home, you get to relax. Out in public, they expect you to grow up. E3 is packing up and leaving town. Do you see this? We need to rekindle the joy of E3. We need to rekindle it as quickly as possible. I need the joy. Where is the joy? That's not the joy. That's goddarn Funko Pops. Joy level down, Funko Pops. These chairs look good.
Hi. This is the best chair in the world. The best chair in the world.
I only have 30 seconds, but I'm going to sit in it, and I will see what I think. I'll see what I think. Is there a way to tighten the back? Like, so it doesn't rock? Posture. Oh, there we go, there we go. So this is how I like to game. You know, I like to be pedal to the metal. I like the blue, that's good. Whoa! Can I lie down and sleep in this right now? Okay, let me get in there. Oh yeah, that's good, that's good. Can I, yeah, give me that lumbar. Okay, lie down and sleep. Okay, let's see if I can sleep. With the amount of caffeine sprinting through my veins like a cavalry of wild horses, it would be a laughable impossibility on par with nuclear fusion for me to accomplish even a moment's rest right now. My mind is racing like a god-darn Formula 1 car, ate another Formula 1 car, snorted a Formula 1 car-sized line of cocaine 2.5 miles around an oval track. There's no sleep gonna happen for me. But you know what? I fall asleep at my god-darn desk enough. Might as well god-darn monetize that action for somebody else, you know what I mean? It's good. I don't know if I'm playing video games or I'm at the dentist, but I love both of those things.
This we sell retail price $399.
It's not bad.
We doing already these chairs for 20 years. Now it's the first year we enter our own brand.
Soul Seed, the best chair in the world? Oh yeah. For me? Oh!
This is for the airplane.
Can we get one for him too? My neck hurts so bad right now. Where are you from?
I'm from Shanghai, China.
I've been to Shanghai. I like Shanghai. Great town. Good food. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, we got pillows. Best swag of E3, but also the best chair in the world. I mean, it's okay. It was an alright chair. It's a decent chair. I need to get my childlike wonder back. Where is my childlike wonder? Where is it? Where did my childlike wonder go? Oh my god, a gamer chair. I believe that stands for electronic win. Is that leather? I feel good sitting here. I feel all right. Is that a Just Dance fanny pack? I wanted one of those so bad.
Did you dance?
No, because if I did, everybody else would go home.
I felt that way. Yeah.
Did you win the dance?
No, I lost. No, embarrassed, sad.
But you got the fanny pack. I wanted this.
No, look at it. It's got a rainbow zipper. My friend got it and I was like, yo, that's some nice merchandise.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You can always put a piece of like duct tape on here and then write your own brand name.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'll just write my name. You're right.
If you wear this around town, it looks like you're commanding people to dance.
You guys are Kotaku, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys did a big Zelda article on me a while ago.
Really? Was it a good one?
I mean, I hope so.
We didn't uncover any like bad things about you.
Ooh, no, it was just how impressive my Zelda was. It was wholesome.
We're in the presence of royalty here.
No. Just wholesome good times.
So have they furnished you literally with one of these chairs?
I actually have 3 now. Yeah, I'm just a whole house. Actually, this one is new, and it's very Score Bunny vibes. And I was like, yo, can new chair? I don't have a white one yet, so I'm gonna just have an entire collection of these by the time we're done.
Can I have one of your 3 chairs? Because I need a chair at home really bad. My chair broke.
Okay, so I have a pink and black, I have a red and black, and I have a blue and black. Which one would you like?
Blue and black. So you said Score Bunny. Is that have you chosen Score Bunny as your starter?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know yet. I haven't chosen yet. No. It's weird. I thought it's usually a lot easier. It's like usually a lot easier. I normally go with water, but this time I don't know.
You don't like Sobble?
I don't know. It's just difficult to think about. I'm gonna keep thinking about it. I don't need to give my burden to you. Thank you for talking to us.
You're very welcome.
And I'm glad Kotaku wrote an article about you and did not say anything mean. Because a lot of people have come up to me and been like, "Hey, Kotaku." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Yeah, Kotaku." It's like,
"You said something bad about me."
and I'm like, "Oh no." So I thought you were really like you were about to kill me. A photo of us? All right. Tweet that at me, McGreevy.
Tweet it, McGreevy.
He got the Final Fantasy VII shirt.
I was there. Why didn't I get a shirt?
This guy got the Final Fantasy VII T-shirt, which they're only giving to one group per day, or two groups per day. Like Tetsuya Nomura designed a T-shirt with this wild design on it, and this guy tweeted at me about how he got it. He got the shirt.
It in his face. I was lucky. I got it, and Tim didn't.
I would wear the heck out of that shirt. He got the goddamn shirt. It was such a cool shirt. A guy over there at Soul Seat gave us free airplane pillows. You don't have to let him know that you're involved with it. Hide your badge. It's like right over there. It's right over there. It's like literally a portable what? Excuse me?
Why are you still standing?
No, I have a critical vitamin B12 deficiency. So what's the angle here? No, but I do have an appointment to have an MRI of my skull next Friday. Yeah. My whole body carries stress. Ooh. Yeah, I do. Wait. Yeah, I feel it. Ooh. Ooh, it feels like I'm having a central nervous system malfunction. But I like it.
Can you handle more?
I can handle a lot more, yeah. Ooh, it feels weird. I bumped my neck earlier at the Fortnite booth in the stupid bouncy castle thing. I'm 40 years old and I got in this dumb thing. And I fell and I hit my head on this, and my neck has hurt like all day. Like right here. I signed a waiver with Epic. I'm not allowed to sue them.
Same thing as a roof, right?
Yeah. Oh, oh no. Oh. Wait, what is this doing? This is weird. Oh, so I am literally being electrically manipulated now with electrics. Is that true? I'm not hating on it. It feels weird. It feels like termites in my nerves. I'm a video editor, so I actually do have I have tingly fingers lately. 10 to 30 minutes once or twice a day. This is like some pharmaceutical stuff. Oh, it feels weird. It feels like I've got moths fluttering under my skin. And how much does this retail for?
I'll get the price out of the way, okay? It's $500.
It's Chewbacca, also known as Chewie. Han Solo, remember when he says, "Punch it, Chewie"? Remember that? Remember that?
Punch it, Chewie.
Remember that? Okay, so when I hold if whoever's editing this, when I hold the microphone up to Chewbacca's mouth, can you insert like a Chewbacca roar? You can't use the real one, so can you go to like Jangle Punks and get like a stock like lion? They combined a lion and a bear and they squeezed. So put one of them at like half speed, like squeeze it 200%, and then put the other one at like 50%, and then chop them and combine them to pitch shift them a little bit when I hold the microphone up to Chewby's mouth. How did you enjoy E3, Chewby? Wow, you sure did not sound copyrighted. Now, of course, just letting the editor of this video know, don't actually cut out the part where I say, editor, leave that in. That's part of the video. That's part of the joke. Don't cut this one out either, because it's explaining the joke is another part of the joke. That's 3 layers of joke explanation we're on right now. Did we rekindle the magic? I feel like we failed. I wanted to rekindle the childhood magic. I wanted to bring back the joy that I felt the first time I went to E3. More chairs. I could have drank so many more energy drinks if only they had them. I'm jittery. You want to pull the plug on this? Just then, as E3 2019's lights started to go out one by one, the annually inevitable driblets of regret began showering down, shellacking smooth the cracks in my brain. Heaviest among these regrets was a deathly wish that I'd made a better go at fatally savoring every bang flavor. Rat water, freak vapor, clown acid, coyote venom, snake dust, dingo poison. Well, I drank an energy drink. I sat in the greatest chair in the world. I tried to sleep in the greatest chair in the world. I had termites enter my nerves. I bragged about the jet airplane I own. And we met an icon of legend. We met Chewbacca. I just tried to do the weirdest stuff I could at Electronic 3. And, well, I did do the weirdest stuff I could. And that's actually it. E3's over. All I wanted to do was rekindle the childish joy. And instead I got a free neck pillow, and I drank the equivalent of about 3 1/4 cups of coffee. Me no feel so good, and soon me sleep long time. E3 has ended. However, video games forever. This has been Tim Rogers for Kotaku.com at Electronic 3 2019. Goodbye. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching my review on Kotaku.com for Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a game written, designed, and directed by Hideo Kojima. Before we get started, a disclaimer. If you're watching this video after you've already played Death Stranding, you might notice that I avoid discussion and demonstration of many of the core game systems and plot points. I did this intentionally because I'm publishing this video a full week before the release of the game. I make this disclaimer here up front because I'm aware of the high possibility that you might be watching this video 10 years after I post it. Because, you see, back in 2002, I wrote an essay comparing Metal Gear Solid 2 to modern Japanese literature. To be perfectly honest, I wrote that essay to troll exactly one specific person in a LiveJournal comment. When I decided to publish the essay on my friends' website at insertcredit.com, I didn't expect to see people continuing to link it on Twitter 17 years later. Heck,
I didn't even expect Twitter to exist. Today, at age 40, I would like to throw as much sincerity into this video as I did with insincerity in that blog post at age 23. However, I would also like to adhere with utmost respect to Sony's review embargo guidelines, which dictate that I use no more than 20 minutes of footage and preserve as many of the game's stupendous surprises as humanly possible. What I'm getting at is, expect to hear a lot of nebulous, emotional, textural loquaciousness out of me, and also expect to see a lot of repeated footage of Death Stranding's protagonist Sam Porter Bridges spraying a full bursting bladder's worth of Monster Energy drink off the edge of a sheer cliff. At any rate, if you clicked this video expecting a quote-unquote normal review of Death Stranding, I'd suggest you punch in 911 right now. Then, keep your finger of choice poised at the ready over the call button.
Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are right now watching my video review of Death Stranding on Kotaku.com, and did you know I'm watching it right alongside you? I thought I would just hop in for a second to provide a couple of director comments, because I understand the review can be quite dense and difficult to understand, like the game. And yes, Sony is actually limiting me to using only 20 minutes of original gameplay footage that I've captured for myself, which I find quite amusing. I mean, reviewing this game in general was a bit of a challenge. It was a very long game, and not only that, they've been playing a long game with this long game. How do you even review a game that has literally 900 trailers? Okay, maybe there's not exactly 900 of them. It has about 889 trailers. And today, Hideo Kojima went ahead and released a new trailer of Death Stranding, the launch trailer. And it is just wildly full of spoilers. I wouldn't want you to have that in your head. If you already watched the launch trailer of the game, which Kojima put up, I mean, good luck keeping it out of your head throughout this game. So yeah, this video has a lot of repeated footage and a lot of footage from the older trailers in it. Because I figure that's kind of in the spirit of the thing, right? I mean, Death Stranding, the metagame is almost as exciting as the game.
After 3 years of the public using its very name as target practice for derisive speculation, Death Stranding has at last graduated from art school and transformed into a product you can buy. Right about now, one question drips from the tips of every game liker's lips. Is Death Stranding a real video game? With triumphant loudness and sparkling clarity, allow me to answer that question. Death Stranding is a real video game. I have played all of it. That brings us to the second and most important question that has been cramming my Twitter DM inbox since the day I was allowed to tweet that I am playing and reviewing Death Stranding.
Is Death Stranding good?
The answer to that question is, how dare you expect another human to answer that question for you? Have you not seen the dozens of minutes of video footage of this game released over the past 3 years? If you have, and you're interested, play the game. If you haven't, and you're still interested, play the game. Googling theories about Death Stranding's plot will qualify as a hobby for millions of people for years. The Death Stranding subreddit right now, today, 2 weeks before the release of the game, is pretty much Little League compared to the MLB that will ensue once this game finally lands. If that sounds exciting to you right now, play the game. If you are so wary of spoilers that your skin right now as you listen to my voice somewhat resembles that of Sam Porter Bridges when he senses a BT in this early trailer for Death Stranding, take my advice and do not even watch this video, because let's face it, I'm just going to talk a lot until I've talked too much. Again, in the spirit of Hideo Kojima, allow me to attach an epilogue to my spoiler warning. As a lifelong observer of Hideo Kojima, as someone whose first video game rental ever was Metal Gear on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988, playing Death Stranding possessing no foreknowledge of its plot or gameplay outside the arcane, ludicrous whale burger of imagery contained within its stylistically bodacious trailers tantamounted to a cathedral of joyful delights. I would not wish the shrill shock of this experience sabotaged in the slightest for any other connoisseur by an instrument so mundane as a game design dissection. In summary, around yonder corner crouches a game whose very gameplay constitutes a spoiler for millions of its already devoted fans. I say to you all,
The heck are you watching this for?
perhaps you wish me to tell you if it's good or not. Listen, with Death Stranding, we finally have the opportunity to see what would happen if the narcs upstairs forgot Hideo Kojima's phone number. Death Stranding is an instant classic that video game players, designers, writers, and thinkers will consider and discuss for the foreseeable future. This is my opinion at its most serious. You can close the tab now. Please come back later and watch the whole thing, though. Please. There's lots of footage of a Pomeranian puppy in here, so come back and watch it for that, maybe. For those who have stuck around, you might have noticed that Kotaku's Heather Alexandra has published a written review on the Kotaku.com website. You might be thinking, 2 reviews? Your question has 2 answers. The first answer is that Death Stranding is a game so big, you would be a fool to review it just once. The second answer is, you're wrong. It's not 2 reviews. It's 6 reviews, because my review is 5 reviews. In order to appropriately pontificate upon the game event that is Death Stranding and its ramifications, I felt the need to review it separately as a game, as a pet, as a film, as a book, and finally, as a piece of work by the artist, Hideo Kojima. Tim Rogers for Kotaku.com presents a video game review starring, designed, directed, written, and edited by Tim Rogers of Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a video game designed, directed, and written by Hideo Kojima. Sony Interactive Entertainment sent me a download code for Death Stranding on Monday, October 14th, 2019. They told me I could send a tweet after 3 a.m. on October 16th, 2019, announcing that I was playing the game and composing a review. Within an hour of sending my tweet, I had received 100 DMs. I keep my Twitter DMs open mostly so that brands can apologize to me. 80 of those DMs were from people asking, what's the gameplay like? So let's start by reviewing Death Stranding as a video game. Right about now, critics everywhere are tripping over themselves to dissect Death Stranding's game design, which is all about tripping over yourself. Reviewing Death Stranding is the Mount Everest of game criticism. Fittingly, the game stars a character dressed like he's about to climb Mount Everest twice. Haters in YouTube comments for many months shot down so-called PlayStation fanboys with accusations that Death Stranding was going to be a quote-unquote walking simulator. Well, guess what, haters? Death Stranding is the Gran Turismo of walking simulators. In Death Stranding, you control Sam Porter Bridges, a courier in a destroyed future. Between shriekingly elaborate cutscenes, which sometimes exceed an hour in length, Sam Porter Bridges trudges back and forth across untold miles of blasted terrain, carrying out thankless delivery missions for a wide range of clients, most of whom live deep inside underground shelters and perfunctorily greet him via hologram. If you think carrying packages, sounds easy, then you've probably never had a customs agent compliment you on your suitcase's impeccable organization while a dog sniffs it for drugs. For about the first 20 hours of my 80-hour experience with Death Stranding, I repeatedly found myself imagining Hideo Kojima interviewing an Amazon delivery person in 2015 with the same enthusiasm I possessed when interviewing Hideo Kojima, director of the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 3, in 2004. I imagined him with a voice recorder held an arm's length out. Isn't it depressing to just leave packages with a doorman or in a lobby? Has a customer ever thanked you personally? When a customer gets angry at the damaged status of a package, how does it feel to have the customer's words proxy relayed to you via your supervisor? Boy, it must be hard to mind curbs and steps when the box obscures your view of your feet, right? So how many times per week do you find yourself buying new shoes? When was the last time you upgraded your hand cart? Don't you miss just, buying things inside stores, surrounded by other people? Kojima's trademark adolescent-like wonder straddles the line between meditation and obsession, eventually burrowing deep enough into the psyche of a delivery person to carve out a texturally unique game design experience. For 3 years, Kojima hyped Death Stranding to high heck with increasingly densely cryptic imagery-filled trailers, only to now release what is ostensibly an open-world QWOP-like courier sim with occasional freakish horror stealth. It's Metal Gear Solid for Silent Hill fans who just spent $400 on a GoRuck GR1 rucksack. You literally have to press the triggers to grip your backpack straps. Press and hold both triggers to grip both straps for maximum balance. Wow. Sam Porter Bridges would get beat up in a high school in the 1990s. You can hold the trigger down to carry an item in your hand. Just don't let go of the trigger or Sam drops it immediately. Wow. Sam would get kicked off of a high school football team. Click the R1 button to operate a terrain scanner to make sure you'll be able to step somewhere without falling over. And you will fall over a lot. Sam Porter Bridges is an Uber Eats driver in a world where cars are made of al dente pasta. Death Stranding's game design interrogates the player into wallowing in its representation of logistical mundanity. In Death Stranding, a character early on describes logistics as the biggest challenge facing mankind. Kojima looked at Amazon, UPS, DHL, and FedEx and asked, what kind of world would it be if delivery people were, in indisputable fact, the bravest people in the world? That's Death Stranding, in which even the most analog stick friendly of video game players will likely struggle to keep the character running in a straight line with a comically tall tower of impossibly fragile, apocalyptically important cargo boxes dangerously wobbling on his back. If I told you 3 years ago that you would play a video game in 2019 that made you say good morning to a UPS guy, you'd probably have punched me in the stomach. After you finish trudging through Death Stranding's artistically, addictively miserable 20-hour on-ramp, you will have probably developed enough fastidious habits to utmostly respect any delivery professional. For example, allow me to capitalize on this opportunity to apologize for all the times I almost tweeted about how UPS has never once successfully delivered a package to my Brooklyn apartment. I keep a running tally. They have missed literally 33 deliveries in a row. They just put the boxes straight into the UPS locker by the local laundromat. 4 times in the past year, I have walked out of my apartment to see a UPS driver literally slapping a "you weren't home" sticker on my building's front door. No package in hand, just the sticker. Today, UPS, I officially forgive you, because I just considered the task of parking that honkin' big truck on my street. Death Stranding trains you to think outside the box, outside of the box. The world is the inventory management system. Your shoes are the Rubik's Cube. It's like, what if Breath of the Wild were boring on purpose? What if Assassin's Creed hated you? What if somebody from Denmark directed a film based on John Boyce's 17776? What if the DC Cinematic Universe rebooted Kevin Costner's The Postman? Shortly after the release of Metal Gear Solid 1 in 1998, AAA video game developers began gunking up every action game with stealth mechanics. Multiple Zelda games have even had stealth segments. If Death Stranding is the top-selling game of 2019, we can probably expect an EA Sports FedEx 2021 and a UPS 2K22. Death Stranding is logistics, the e-sport. It's got the reflex-based technical requirements of an action game and also the thinking wizard's gauntlet of terrain mastery that separates video games from interactive contests. As you make ready to embark Point A, it always behooves you to plot your route toward Point B with extreme care, else you get stuck with depleted resources or beef it on a tricky incline and lose someone else's precious valuables. Your only tools for considering your route are your real-world memory of the terrain and the in-game map screen. Like much of Death Stranding's game design, the map screen communicates misery, probably on purpose. It's frustratingly monochrome. It's hard to gauge height differentials. The slightest vector miscalculation might send you to the edge of a cliff, which you might unwisely in your haste try to rappel down using a climbing rope, which turns out to be too short. Like I said, the first 24 or so hours of the experience give you pure misery, in which you painfully learn the habits the protagonist already possesses. Every player is probably going to come out of Death Stranding's on-ramp with a different story of the time they got lost. In keeping
Where's Honeyfrost? Great question. I think he's just not available. Maybe he's out of the house. Cause like, let me check. Yeah, he's not online, so he's very much just not home, it seems like. Or like his internet's out.
With the story's post-apocalyptic theme, you find yourself largely alone in this scourged landscape. You primarily witness the presence of others through their legacies. In summary, if I set up a ladder on the side of a mountain, you'll be able to see it, use it, and slam the like button if you found the experience helpful, or if you just want to be nice. If you hear this and think, that sounds too easy, then buddy, buckle up. Death Stranding's world is so disgustingly vast, its terrain so monstrously hostile, that even the combined roping and laddering efforts of the entire video game criticism community could not blunt the edge of the brutal hazing ritual of the game's opening. Even deep into the end game, you will find your Sam exhausted, yourself exhorting your television beyond midnight for sweet relief. Then, before you know it, you're jamming like 100 times on a bridge built by a YouTuber with way more subscribers than you. Your jealousy means nothing in the face of safe passage across this deep river. Hideo Kojima has humbled you. Hideo Kojima himself said in a recent interview that Death Stranding doesn't quote-unquote get fun until about halfway through, and I totally get what he meant. The game forces you to learn how to pay attention to it, and then gently asks you to keep paying attention for the remainder of the experience. Once you've appropriately rewired your brain and formulation of good mindfulness habits, Death Stranding goes ahead and dumps an entire playground's worth of toys on you, and buddy, you're gonna have a wild time. I once heard somebody from NASA say that if humans ever establish a colony on Mars, then living on Mars would be like living in an airport at best, and living in an airplane at worst. Maybe I'm paraphrasing this wrong. I like it though. I remembered this sentiment numerous times during the 70 hours I spent traipsing to and from hard-to-reach points A and B in Death Stranding. The brutally depressing lifestyles of the invisible underground population members reflects pristinely in the utilitarian, mundane repetitiousness of the game's user experience. Like, look at this menu. It's like the video game equivalent of airport immigration paperwork. Here in the Gran Turismo of walking simulators, environmental and equipmental factors resoundingly crash against one another. Death Stranding is hiking for accountants. A farcical avalanche of game design systems poking and prodding one another, piling ever and ever higher until they become a spaghetti mountain of a narrative unto themselves. Calling Death Stranding an action game is like the inverse of calling hiking boots rally shoes.
See, I don't really know what I was thinking when I wrote this rally shoes line, and I felt really weird when I was reading it, and then I thought I was going to cut it out when I was editing, and I didn't cut it out. I left it in there because I got a deadline and such, and it's easier to make a long thing than it is to make a short thing. Although I just thought this would have been a really good opportunity to be like 2 years after getting over it with Bennett Foddy, Hideo Kojima turns out his own spin on sexy hiking. And then I could have shown Norman Reedus in the shower. That would have been funny. Or it would have been, you know, whatever.
Between its distant narrative beats, Death Stranding crushes you with addictively miserable logistical nightmares. Its landmark-defying expansive geometry mesmerizes would-be memorizers. Turgid full of complex asynchronous online ideas seemingly born day one of Demon's Souls. Floppy with old-fashioned PC gaminess. Filthy with red-hot Octodad sweat, Death Stranding represents Hideo Kojima closing out this decade with his own sublime regurgitation of everything Minecraft, of every early access sorta janky survival game on Steam, of every one of the Darkest Souls. Death Stranding proves that if you go all the way in on something, you can make even a game that's literally entirely about fetch quests fascinating. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com Pet Owners Review of Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a video game written, produced, designed, and directed by Hideo Kojima. On Valentine's Day 2004, the 8th question I asked Hideo Kojima during our first 2-hour sit-down after I scammed Hideo Kojima's publicist into believing I was a writer for Wired magazine by publishing several articles in Wired magazine and then convincing the editor of Wired magazine to vouch for me was, Hideo Kojima, I just read the news. Metal Gear Solid has been canceled forever. What's your next game? As with all the weird questions I asked him that day, Hideo Kojima produced a shockingly specific answer with immediacy. His answer was, I want to make a virtual pet. So I said, like Seaman? And he said, Seaman is interesting, though I mean more of a physical virtual pet. And I said, so like a Tamagotchi? And he said, yes, though I would want to make a deeper connection possible. I would want the player to have full conversations with their pet. And I said, like Seaman? He screwed up the center of his face. Not exactly unlike Seaman. No, he said with a little parenthetical laughs. Kojima told me in 2004 that his dream video game would be, quote, like a person, unquote. He said it wouldn't even involve a game console or a controller. It would have no clear goal. He told me that his dream video game would be, and here I must pause to promise you that I'm not making this up.
I actually definitely am not making this up. He definitely did say what I'm about to say that he said.
A small robot child. As the player / owner / guardian built a relationship with the robot child, they would become aware of a looming, lingering backstory. Eventually, a narrative catharsis would rock them and challenge their beliefs about reality. Also, it would make you feel exactly like a parent. Parenting, Kojima said on Valentine's Day 2004, is probably the perfect game. He then summarized his ideal video game as a game that feels like a person. Kojima's games often present us tiny diorama worlds. Previews back in the day for Metal Gear Solid 2 gleefully presented the information that if you knock over an ice bucket in a kitchen scene early in the game, the ice cubes melt on the counter. I asked Kojima about this on Valentine's Day 2004. I was like, the ice cubes melt, though they don't melt in real time. They melt too fast, like the countertop is heated somehow. Kojima laughed. He said, well, it's not supposed to be completely realistic. It's more of a gesture. They melt at that speed because it's more exciting for a video game. I don't want to make a whole video game about ice melting. 15 years later, he has published a game where the main character carries a Tamagotchi of sorts. Sam Porter Bridges carries a bridge baby, which the game constantly refers to as BB. The bridge baby, communicating via an external robotic scanning device, warns Sam of the presence of invisible other-dimensional monsters known as BTs. If you take too many bad steps, if you trip and jostle the baby's bottle too many times, its shrill cries escape your DualShock 4 controller speaker. You must then soothe the baby into silence by rocking it, using the DualShock 4's tilt sensors. A music box rendition of Brahms' Lullaby plays softly, soothing your bridge baby on a perilous mountain precipice in screaming snow wind becomes a frequent comical sight. If your bridge baby gets too stressed, it enters a state of autotoxemia, which does not sound like something you want anywhere near your baby. Autotoxemia also means BB can no longer spot BTs for you until you get to a safe house and reboot him. Autotoxemia does not bode well for your precious cargo. Through story twists and cutscene cuteness and gameplay hooks, Death Stranding tries whatever it can to make you feel responsibly parental about little BB. Did it work on me? I can't say without spoiling major plot elements, so let this suffice as an explanation. I have been calling my new little tiny Pomeranian puppy BB incessantly since about an hour into Death Stranding. Now, several days after completing the game, I'm still repeatedly calling him Bibby Babbis. That's not even his name. Interestingly, Sam Porter Bridges himself feels more like a virtual pet than BB. As he relaxes in a safe house after some excruciating work, you can rotate the camera to get a better better look at him. You can make him make faces in the mirror. You can coordinate the colors of his backpack and suit. You can watch him take a shower. You can put on a hat. You can make him urinate. You can make him take a dump. Or you can confront him with that most difficult of choices, to drink Monster Energy or to put on sunglasses. I can hardly decide that for my real self. Unlike Red Dead Redemption 2, however, you cannot shave his face, which is a shame because he has worse facial hair than me.
He's got worse facial hair than me.
Like, look at this little rat fur glue spot here. On paper, all of this may sound like industry standard video game character customization nonsense, though Kojima and Norman Reedus do a wonderful job of selling Sam as a character and as a person. With glances, winks, and finger points, Sam gently caresses the fourth wall, and compared to Kojima's usual fourth wall sledgehammering, Death Stranding represents artistic restraint. Even inside the fourth wall, Sam comes across as more of a person than the typical video game character. Whenever he eats one of the large, bizarre water bears that serve as the game inhabitants' nutritional food of choice, he expresses disgust. He is constantly and sometimes profanely vocalizing disdain and pathetic frustration while traversing harsh terrain. He talks to himself when things are going well. He calls himself Sammy Boy. He speaks lovingly to motorcycles, especially when they're slightly faster than the usual motorcycles. Way back in 2004, when discussing the hypothetical game that feels like a person, I asked Kojima about Solid Snake's inventory system. I was like, so you can take diazepam to slow the twitching of your muscles to help steady your aim with a sniper rifle, and the game builds such dramatic tension out of these moments where you're lying on your belly underneath a car waiting for a bad guy's feet to come into view so you can shoot him in the ankle with a tranquilizer dart, though at the same time your guy has literally about 900 pounds of military weaponry invisible to somewhere on his person. The logisticality and the video gaminess sort of clash there, don't you think? Kojima replied tersely, I think it's funny. I asked Kojima if he was sick of people asking dumb questions like this, and he replied that no, he actually loved it, and he thinks about that sort of thing a lot.
Yes, he did tell me that he liked that question. He might have been just being nice to me. I don't know. I actually have a photograph from that day that I first interviewed Kojima, and I don't want to put it in this video. Maybe I'll flop it in right here. I'll put a little marker here. Maybe put that photo in there. Maybe give it about a frame. If you think you can pause it fast enough, you can see the picture of me and Hideo Kojima. He put his arm around my back. He touched me.
15 years later, it's quite clear to me that Hideo Kojima was possibly, all the way back in 2004, planning to someday make a game about a guy who has to carry a lot of heavy, wobbly stuff across hostile terrain. I feel like the logistical focus of Death Stranding and Kojima's long-ago statements on the potential of the virtual pet genre are not at all unrelated. Anyone who owned an original Tamagotchi way back in the day can tell you that the primary catharsis of that little plastic egg was its intrusive insistence on annoying you. If we apply that persistent annoyance into a quote-unquote action game, we end up with something like Sam Porter Bridges' wobbly box stack, or the fact that his shoes can wear out and then he'll start slowly losing blood because he's walking around barefoot. So, is BB a virtual pet? Not really. It's more like an item you have to treat preciously. Is Sam Porter Bridges a virtual pet? That is a more interesting question. Sam is about as much our BB as BB is Sam's BB, seeing as you can make him drink Monster Energy, wear sunglasses, and urinate into a river, maybe all at the same time. I won't spoil it. I'd say Sam qualifies as a virtual pet. Also, you're going to watch him take a lot of showers. You can make him remove his own bloody toenails. You can make him massage his own shoulders, from which he derives much pleasure. Having said that, for the entire last half of the game, I went on a dumper strike. I refused to let Sam drop a deuce. Meanwhile, I increased my CryptoBiot consumption. I ate as many as I could whenever the game presented me an opportunity to do so. I let Sam sleep at every safe house, and every time I refused him a sit-down on the throne. Blustery wind in his face, jagged rocks ripping his feet to shreds through his broken boots. All I wanted was to hear Norman Reedus gruffly mutter,
I gotta take a dump.
Unfortunately for all listening realism aficionados, Sam Porter Bridges did not complain once. In summary, immersion denied. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com film review of Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, a video game directed, designed, produced, and written by Hideo Kojima, with trailers edited by Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima once famously said that 70% of his body is movies. This is interesting because most people's bodies are 70% water. Kojima's games reflect his affection for films about as frequently as they remind you of video games. Kojima's games are both things that you watch and things that you play in such contentious balance that I think maybe the absolute weirdest genre of comment on a video game forum is the one where someone says they think Kojima's cutscenes are too long. Like, if you're not chill with the cutscenes, how are you chill with the game? Cutscene and gameplay in a work of Kojima are so sublimely, inextricably codependent that stating a preference for one over the other seems like something a pathological liar would do. Aware of this derisive discussion in the wake of Metal Gear Solid 2, I asked Kojima on Valentine's Day 2004, point blank, do you like movies more than video games? He froze. Slowly, a grin crept onto his face. If you'd like to know what kind of grin it was, look at his Instagram. Find a picture of Hideo Kojima standing less than 4 feet away from Mads Mikkelsen. It was that kind of grin. After a microscopic hesitation, Hideo Kojima replied, "There are things that games can do better than films. If we use those skillfully, then games are absolutely better than films." Back in 2004, Kojima told me about some of his favorite films. He talked about Russian films, about Italian films. The list he rattled off as having inspired Metal Gear Solid 2 ran from David Lynch to Total Recall. In Death Stranding, I feel David Lynch. I feel Total Recall. I feel Nicholas Winding Refn. Maybe I'm projecting, though I also feel the work of Paolo Sorrentino, director of The Great Beauty and The Young Pope. Some of the earlier dialogues in the game were so profoundly, absurdly surreal in their David Lynchian matter of factuality that I absolutely had to turn the subtitles off to allow them to land under their own thunder. Most strongly, I feel Andrei Tarkovsky. In late 2004, Kojima and I had a conversation about Tarkovsky's film Solaris. I had said, "You can't just make a game that's like Solaris, though. It would be too boring." Kojima furrowed his brow like that was a challenge. In Death Stranding, Kojima weaponizes Tarkovskyan emptiness through game design. Of Shadow of the Colossus and Gears of War, I once wrote in 2006 that video games create their best drama during moments that mainstream films would edit out. In Shadow of the Colossus, for example, you spend your most memorable moments clinging for dear life to some flailing hairy beast. In Gears of War, the heaviest drama that you feel is when you crouch behind a wall, waiting for the enemy to make a mistake. Movies would cut the 10 minutes of hanging on the back of a hairy beast down to about 40 seconds. Games, on the other hand, thrive during those 10 minutes. Much and deeply as we all may love minutely manipulating a sniper rifle, taking aim, and remote owning a distant noob, video games thrive in the mundane. It is not the click of the left mouse button or the puff of smoky blood that we remember. It is the lying in wait. It is the holding of our breath in tandem with our virtual avatar. It is the aiming, not the shooting, that owns the noob. Likewise, Death Stranding thrives during its long, slow walks, especially the parts where the scenery becomes gorgeous just as a mesmerizing song kicks in. With stealth in Metal Gear Solid and now with hostile terrain in Death Stranding, Kojima and his teams have always tactically encouraged mindfulness in disproportion to action. Kojima always wants you to pay more attention to your virtual surroundings than you would to your real-life surroundings. By making a game where you can fail your mission if you stub your god-darn toe on one tiny rock, Kojima encourages you to be paying so much attention to every detail that once plot beats start hitting, you will be screaming. Again, game design and narrative wash one another's hands in a perfect helix. The Tarkovsky reference I made a minute ago was more than a mere name drop. Both Death Stranding and Tarkovsky's Stalker share numerous elements. In Death Stranding's world, porters are like Stalker's stalkers, people who, for whatever reason, are able to traverse ghostly, haunted terrain which terrifies every other inhabitant of the world. Porters and stalkers both are trusted with tasks and errands by members of a helpless populace. I will say no more of Death Stranding's plot. I realize everything is a spoiler, so allow me to speak nebulously and texturally. Here goes. I'll be honest, I do not smoke weed. Having said that, I love weed stuff. I've seen the band Boris like literally 60 times. I love glacially slow movies. I listen to binaural beats when I sleep. I love ambient music. I love loud, pleasant hums. I enjoyed the first 20 minutes I ever spent in an MRI. I love sitting around and thinking. I also once went to an all-night Tarkovsky marathon with a friend possessing smuggled edibles. The films were all in Russian with no subtitles. I was no less bored than my friend was. I just love stuff with confidence in its own texture. Death Stranding's helix of cinema and game contains about as much Tarkovskyan slowness as one could possibly cram into a game before it becomes a certifiably bad game, and it's all the better for it. Of course, as Kojima games are wont to do, Death Stranding does occasionally temporarily abandon core components of its carefully crafted game design systems in the pursuit of better cinema. I genuinely admire Kojima's games for letting go of their darlings like this. I genuinely love how much rule bending you can get away with in a Kojima game. Death Stranding took me 70 hours to get through the main story, and it's going to take me about 80 hours to edit this video, so let me tell you, I was pretty much Tarkovsky's nationality through this whole game. Toward the end, I got sloppy. I was taking terrible tumbles. My SAM was made of noodles. I could see better routes. I acknowledged their presence. I just wasn't taking them. I was falling from rock to rock down sheer cliffs and dealing with the damage later. Kojima's games always let you get away with bending the careful rules. They never explicitly make you feel bad about it, though the delicate cinematography every elsewhere in the game encourages you to understand that you could be playing better. You could be respecting the game more. And when you do play the game well, performing the role of a dramatic film protagonist with appropriate grace and honor, you feel great. In summary, Death Stranding is basically Andrei Tarkovsky's Super Mario Bros. The movie, the video game. It stars an ill-advisedly facial-haired working man with curious dietary habits, dressed in the uniform of his trade, and a cap with part of his name on it, contending with alternate dimensions whilst questing from stronghold to stronghold at the behest of a blonde woman in a dress who is taller than him, and there's a baby. In summary, is Death Stranding a good film? In short, no, it's not, because it's not a film, it's a video game. Also, if we're comparing it to a film, even in its cutscenes, the pacing is a nightmare. So what I'm saying is, it's less of a film and more of a book. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com book review of Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, a video game authored by Hideo Kojima. Before playing Xevious and deciding to become a game developer, Hideo Kojima aspired to write novels. I asked him about his novels back in 2004. He told me the title and a plot synopsis of his first, ultimately unpublished novel. I've never seen the information published anywhere else, so I'm going to respect its privacy. Kojima's literary tastes are like if you brought a shotgun to a library. I mean that in a non-violent way.
I actually want to point out that when I first interviewed Kojima, I asked him what the most recent book was that he had read, and this is true. I shouldn't keep saying this is true. It makes it seem like I'm a liar. I asked him what the most recent book he had read was, and he said it was the goddamn Da Vinci Code, and he said he loved it, and I thought that was really funny. And I've told people that privately for like a very long time, kind of as like a joke. Here's the thing. I've read all of the Twilight books. I've read all of the goddamn 50 Shades books. I have also read all the great Russian literature. I've read every work of Jorge Luis Borges. We can't judge Kojima on his goddarn having read the Da Vinci Code, because I've read the Da Vinci Code, and maybe you have too. I just thought it was really funny for several years that that was the book he said he had read.
Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding opens with a quote from a short story called Nawa, meaning rope, by the Japanese author Kobo Abe. Death Stranding goes on to lay down and gently massage the theme of human connections in a manner that would do Abe's story proud. In case you've never read that story, by the way, I would recommend you read it. It's not very long. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an English translation of it available anywhere, so I translated it myself and put it on medium.com just for you. Over the course of its narrative, Death Stranding will recall themes and motifs of science fiction and speculative fiction from over a long stretch of decades. Voracious readers might notice tinges of Thomas Pynchon's postmodernism, Kobo Abe's pointy absurdism, or even a little Haruki Murakami magical nonchalance. Perhaps most relevantly, the story evokes memories of the works of Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, authors of the novel Roadside Picnic, which, yes, became the film Stalker. Kojima Productions' studio mascot, the skeleton face astronaut Ludens, is possibly a reference to a race of beings from the Strugatsky brothers' novel The Time Wanderers. That's the final book of the Noon universe, which includes the novel Hard to Be a God, which I would recommend for everybody, not just people who are looking to play Death Stranding. Kojima's works also often relentlessly exhibit what newspaper critics of mainstream genre fiction like to describe as a page-turning quality. As the sun came up in the real world during Death Stranding's closing moments, I remembered that this is a pattern with me and Kojima's works. I can't seem to finish a single one of his games without pulling an all-nighter at the end. Once the story starts to wind down and you think you're going to finish the game before bed, it starts unraveling in a Niagara Falls of fancy exposition. I can say with pristine confidence that I have finished every game Hideo Kojima has directed since the original Metal Gear Solid While the Sun Rose. We could dissect Death Stranding's pacing and themes. We could scrutinize dialogue and discuss the intersection of fantasy, science fiction, and speculative fiction represented by this game's dizzying frisbee of a plot. However, it's not fully possible to assess Kojima's writing as literary fiction. For example, once you've seen the gorgeous cutting-edge graphics of the blasted, barren, terrifying, cold future landscapes, you'll give up wondering how the author might have stylistically depicted them in prose. So we arrive at a possible new equation defining narrative video games. Games equals movies plus books. Fiction, of course, is not the only kind of books, so let's talk about Kojima's undersung status as a non-fiction author. Lately, I see a lot of people pointing to Kojima's Nostradamus-esque prescience expressed in the closing moments of Metal Gear Solid 2, which contains a monstrously long lecture dialogue regarding the loss of humanity via what we can see in hindsight might have been a perfect prediction of the rise of social media. Death Stranding tells many tales of caution regarding our modern society. It shows us a population who lives deep underground, who shuns human contact to the point of ubiquitous asexuality, who wait entitled for package deliveries from a person braver and stronger than they are. It shows us a world where science has literally proven the existence of an afterlife, and spiritualism is therefore no longer quite as valuable. Death Stranding speculates boldly upon a future where Amazon is God. They could have called it the Bezos Ultimatum. For example, the first time I saw Sam's windowless underground private bedroom, my immediate thought was that I would definitely live there right now. As the story continued and I visited dozens of similar bedrooms, I started to wonder exactly how bad am I supposed to feel that I would definitely live here. It bears repeating that Kojima said in an interview recently that the game does not quote-unquote get fun until about halfway through. He was specifically referring to the slow-paced, repetitive, Bennett Foddian struggle core gameplay of the opening chapters, in which the player is helpless and weak. Yes, in later chapters you unlock better gear, you get robot legs that let you run faster. Soon you can fabricate vehicles, you can collaborate with players online to build roads across the whole continent. We could do it if we just got over ourselves and took time away from the main quest to deliver materials to one road node each. And yes, the game does eventually give you weapons with triggers which fire projectiles. The first half of the game is miserable from more than just a tactile design perspective, however. The writing constantly assaults you with new terms and words. Death Stranding's glossary rapidly becomes a hostile terrain in and of itself. One quickly becomes as lost in the library of dictionaries required to comprehend Death Stranding's world building as they will become lost in Death Stranding's world itself. You could generate 100 Kojima bingo cards and not get a bingo within the first 20 hours of this story. It's that dense. Bring a hacksaw because you're gonna need it to get through this jungle of vocabulary salad. There's a character literally named Bridget Strand. Bridget as in bridge it, as in put a bridge over it. And there's a company called Bridges, which is connecting America. If this were any more on the nose, it would be a nose. Finally, you might want to keep a phone charger near you on your sofa because you're going to burn out your phone battery looking at Wikipedia. Just go ahead and look up FFXIV right now to get it out of the way. Of course, I already knew what FFXIV meant for a really complicated reason we do not have time to get into here. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com Hideo Kojima review of Kojima Productions' and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, the new video game designed, produced, directed, and written by Hideo Kojima. Recently, Hideo Kojima made a tweet listing the areas in which he was involved in Death Stranding's development. It was a long list of areas. Some people felt squirmy about his self-pride. They saw him as minimizing the work of his large team of talented developers. Others said that maybe it was a ham-fisted translation mishap, that Kojima was merely saying he was involved in all of these areas and that he took responsibility for them. I say it's a little bit of both. On the one hand, everyone I know who has ever worked with Kojima says the man has nuanced self-awareness and an excellent sense of humor. On the other hand, yes, the man is proud of himself. I have played all of his latest video game, and I declare with a critic's distance that he deserves to be proud of himself. Whether Kojima is a true auteur or a good artist or whatever is a ticket to a boring conversation. For best and for worst, Kojima is more himself than any game director out there. The buyer of a Hideo Kojima game understands the pedigree of the product from moment zero. Kojima's games are full of himself, to a degree no one else's games ever have been. Yes, certainly we definitely should have more games of such towering budgets helmed as visionarily by more diverse creators. I'm sure plenty of people out there could do what Kojima does given the opportunity. It represents a puzzle right now, today, to review a game directed by Hideo Kojima without addressing the opportunity Kojima brings with him from Konami. Death Stranding is a large game made by technically a new studio, though that doesn't qualify it as just some indie game. Let's instead appreciate the fact that Kojima got the huge blank check to make this enormous, bonkers, bizarre, book-like video game because of his history. Kojima has paid slow dues over many decades. Even ignoring the due-paying element, one would struggle to write a lecture about narrative design without describing Kojima's early contributions to the art. Hideo Kojima has been around. Death Stranding represents him being around louder and clearer than ever before. For years, we've derided Hideo Kojima for his games' problematic elements or hammy dialogue. Whatever cogent observations he seemingly made in the past, we all beheld with awareness both of his luxurious habits and of the possibility that luck might have led him to the place where he ended up. I, for one, have always given him the benefit of the doubt. I've seen him for what he is, an honest man hanging on to the creative spirit of a 12-year-old, a spirit that I, too, once had, which I perfectly lost somewhere along my way between then and today. I have seen all of Death Stranding. It feels surreal to type that sentence because for the longest time I too presumed it would never emerge as a real game. I have seen all of Death Stranding. I sat in my cold living room with my little Pomeranian bridge baby on my lap, weeping like a weirdo at the song that plays over the credits. I knew then that right now, right this minute, some critic somewhere had already typed the sentence, Hideo Kojima has done it again. In the interest of subverting cliches, I won't type that, even though I just did. Instead, allow me to declare with finality that Death Stranding is the most Hideo Kojima game Hideo Kojima has ever made. It is a game so bursting full of a person and their ideas that one needn't even focus on the exact texture of the ideas to appreciate the gesture of the spectacle. This game is enormous. There has never been another video game like it. At long last, I feel perfect vindication at having given Hideo Kojima the benefit of the doubt for the past 2 decades. In its cheekiest Kojima moments, Death Stranding nails me to the wall with unexpected laughter. In its most "where are you going with this, buddy" moments, it slaps me hard in the face with the density of its personality. In its quietest moments, it inspires an awe I have never seen Kojima attempt. In eschewing Metal Gear Solid's perfectly polished geometrical level designs for sprawling, unknowably vast, fascinatingly empty-ish open-world terrain, Kojima's range as a creative director impresses me. In its punctuations between contemplations, Death Stranding punches me in the stomach with a dozen feelings at once. As per my manipulation, the virtual cable guy inside my television finishes a perilous, slow traversal of another stretch of waste, inserts his magical key at the bunker outpost computer terminal, boots up the network, and brings other players' structures online. Right there, materializing in front of me, is a safe house with 9,000 likes already, built many hours before me by a critic at a video game publication who probably didn't have to dink around for 6 hours, 20% of the way through the game, to capture footage for a video review. Here at last is the latest shot fired in the battle of Hideo Kojima versus the United States of America. We have crossed the frontier, and look, someone has already set up a McDonald's franchise. The very nature of a Hideo Kojima game dictates that one critic alone cannot review it. The true review of a Kojima game is the endless conversation and speculation perpetrated by its players. This review takes years to compose. Kojima's games are treasure troves. We can't simply get the experiences out of our system the way friends driving home from a movie theater might. We need a book club. The true review of Death Stranding will be visible in the REI Core nylon jumpsuit attire, which shall rise into ubiquity around 2021. I feel so much more than the tangential words I have spoken in this review. I can't speak most of what I feel because I don't want to diminish your experience. This review feels empty without my gushing copious spoilers at you. I won't do that, so once again, allow me to speak nebulously. With Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima says something genuinely important about the discomfort and discomforting nature of a destroyed future. Did you play Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008? If so, did you like it? For 3 years, we, the game likers of the world, have crouched down in the crown of weeds at the base of Hideo Kojima's alabaster tower, eagerly licking every downward trickling driplet of the maple syrup of what the heck and the agave nectar of gimme some more. Whether Hideo Kojima is an auteur, a genius, an artist, all three, or none of the above, nobody in the game industry builds mystique or puts together an interactive entertainment experience like Hideo Kojima. When Metal Gear Solid 4 arrived in 2008, an elephant strutted into the room with it. Here was a game whose like we might never see again. Metal Gear Solid 5 exists, though by that point, Kojima had gone Hollywood with power, his inner misfitism crushed beneath game designerly restraint and the will of corporate overlords. You cannot convince me that Metal Gear Solid 4 does not represent the shrillest artistic scream yet heard in the AAA gamosphere of its time. Metal Gear Solid 4 presented me with a masterpiece of such peculiar structure that in order to adequately review it, I felt the need to review what I considered the 25 best games of all time, only so that I might lovingly put not Metal Gear Solid 4 at the top. At the time of Metal Gear Solid 4's arrival, a friend remarked that we had never seen and might never see another game like it. Metal Gear Solid 4 had baked so long and so fully in the lore of its forebears that it transcended self-importance and teleported firmly into the territory of self-necessity. If Metal Gear Solid 4 had been any more self-absorbed, it would have been invisible. Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008 presented us the most roundly robust, thorough collage of a game director's psyche we had ever experienced. Maybe some of it was dumb. Maybe some of it was gross. Maybe some of it was tedious. Maybe some of it was problematic. Absolutely all of it, however, was Kojima. Never before had a video game so clearly, loudly been the product of some definitely existing person. Until Death Stranding. Death Stranding, transcending even Metal Gear Solid 4, shows us pure, loud, sticky wet, piping hot Hideo Kojima. If you've ever fancied the notion of grinding Hideo Kojima into a fine powder and freebasing him, the first 2 hours of Death Stranding might liquefy every bone in your body. Heck, that's only if the Kojima Productions studio logo splash doesn't flat out kill you first. The ensuing game deals us up again and again what we expect when we hear Hideo Kojima's name. A whole teacher's petly bonker bucket bounty of stuff fragments. Some of it dumb, most of it fun, lots of it weird, and absolutely all of it deep-rooted into a concrete foundation of game designerly fundamentals. It begins, it middles, it winds down and down and down, and then it comes to an end and, well, look. I've been critiquing video games on some kind of a professional level for 20 years now. I have written reams of text about the works of Hideo Kojima alone. I got my first freelance writing offer because of a stupid essay in which I compared Metal Gear Solid 2 to the work of Japanese author Kobo Abe. I'm not about to shake the criticism tree and let platitude fruits bonk me on the head about Death Stranding, a game that literally begins with a quote from a Kobo Abe story and ends with, well, you'll see. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say, Hideo Kojima has done it again, even though I did just say it. Instead, I'll say this. Hideo Kojima has finally done it.
Hideo Kojima has finally done it, I say here. And with the final trailer that he released minutes before I came into this room, he finally did it really hard. He did it like 800%.
I know it's a quiet stream, but are you doing okay, Cheese? Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing real good, actually. Nothing bad's happening. Nothing exciting's happening. Just real nice and chill. Just fishing. Oh, shrimp. Yeah, I'm not saying nothing because, like, I'm just like, this is me in my most natural state. Every time this past week I said, oh, it's a lazy 14 stream, I'm not gonna really try. It's because I'm not trying to be entertaining. I was just like playing the game like I normally would play, which is to say, quietly, without anyone, like, without needing to, like, talk to anyone. Except for Honey. Extremely casual. And that's what this one is too. But even more so.
In closing, when I completed Death Stranding, the sun was just about all the way up. I lifted my sleeping little puppy off my lap and put him into his cage. I locked the gate while he slept in his little pink bed. He didn't start yapping at me until I was already halfway done brushing my teeth. I went out to his cage and looked at him. He was jumping up and down, panting, yipping, poking his little paws out at me. What a remarkably, shockingly honest creature. All he wants in the world is to be palpably near another warm, living creature. I crouched down and looked the sweet beast in the eyes. I apologized to him with human words. I told him he had to sleep alone until he learned how to not take a dump in my bed. He couldn't understand a word I was saying. He rubbed as much of his little head against my hand as he could through those plastic cage bars. The creature was hungry enough for even the tiniest little touch. Lacking human words, potently possessive of superhuman honesty, this puppy pressed the top of his head at the tip of my index finger. The gesture of this little puppy following the spellbinding, head-aching, sun-rising all-nighter conclusion of Death Stranding brought me, for a moment, literally to tears. I got in bed. My girlfriend woke up for a moment. She asked what time it was, and I answered, definitely time to go to bed. She asked, did you finish it? I said, yeah. She asked, was it good? I froze. Hideo Kojima once made a famous analogy to steak. He said the PlayStation 3 was like a steak you can have at a fancy restaurant, the Xbox 360 was like a steak you can eat at a friend's house, and the Nintendo Wii was like a steak you make yourself at home. With Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima has finally made a game that is like eating 60 pounds of vegetables at gunpoint. Does a silky slab of meat and a triumphant pile of potatoes await afterward? I won't say. In summary, wow. I need the dumbest game possible right now. Dude, that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game is right around the corner. And Pokemon. Wow, I can't wait to level up some Pokemon. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. I'm Tim Rogers. I was born stupid. However, I will not die hungry. Video games forever, Kotaku.com.
Oh, also, the game has Conan O'Brien in it. Did you all see that? Did you see that? Kojima tweeted about that. It was on Conan. I just want to let you all know we here at Kotaku.com found Conan O'Brien in the game before they revealed that Conan O'Brien was in the game. Heather Alexandra did up a little clip of finding Conan O'Brien, and we were going to post it eventually when we were allowed to post it. So Kojima stole our clicks, basically, and Conan. I mean, of course, they weren't going to just put Conan O'Brien in the game and then not say that he was in there. See, I've got these monster energies here. These actually are not mine. These belong to Eleanor Phi at Gizmodo. She orders them and has them brought in. I've actually never had this one. It's the Monster Rehab. 10 calories? It's not bad. Actually, this one is mine, this purple one, and it is ice cold. Let's go ahead and take a sip of this. I've actually never had this purple one. It's got 0 calories. Ultraviolet, it's called. Not kind of not something you really want to put into your stomach because it makes you think of radiation. So. Tastes like something you drink in the old high school cafeteria.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Bum, bum.
Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching Kotaku.com. It's that time of the year again, the end of it. While everyone else and their stepbrother are out there shouting their picks for Games of the Year 2018 from the highest, windiest rooftops, I sit here in an uncomfortably hot voice recording booth in a reminiscent state of mind. I'm not just looking back, I'm looking way back to 10 years ago. Maybe you noticed that I already made a video about my favorite Games of the Year 2018. I hope you watched it. If you didn't, that's okay. You probably had something else to do. I've got to say, I always feel silly picking my favorite games of the year. Anyone who's ever spoken a critical opinion of a piece of entertainment media knows that artists don't make classics. Artists leave classics unfinished. Time does the rest of the work. While many advancements in the science of criticism over the past centuries allow tastemakers to form meaningful opinions of a piece of work's potential long-standing value, true classics do slip through the cracks of the mind. And often. Furthermore, sometimes critics praise a work that time later sees transmogrified into an object of ridicule. The Oscars serve as the perfect cautionary example to any aspiring critiquer. In 1994, Forrest Gump won the Academy Award for Best Picture over Pulp Fiction. Ask any film scientist today and they will tell you that Pulp Fiction left an impact of far greater magnitude. That's not even the worst example. In 2006, Crash won Best Picture, and that's not even a remotely good movie. It doesn't even matter what else was nominated, though I'll just say that Brokeback Mountain was nominated, and, well, that movie owns. I do not know what the scientifically perfect marination time is after which it is legal to consider a work a classic. In the interest of simplicity, I will use this season as an opportunity to look back exactly 10 years. So welcome to my favorite games of the year, 10 years ago edition. Fallout 3 is okay. Oh wow, that's literally literally all that I wrote about Fallout 3. I guess I accidentally wrote down 11 games, and I decided not to. I wrote all this yesterday. Yeah, I mean, Fallout 3 was okay. I liked it better than Oblivion. I liked the stupid turn-based sort of menu system. I thought that was okay. Though, like, New Vegas is a million times better, so a lot of critics put Fallout 3, like, up near the top of their list, or at the very top of their list in 2008, though I feel like New Vegas kind of eradicates any reason to talk about Fallout 3. In my thorough research for this script, I noticed that Grand Theft Auto 4 won more Game of the Year awards from more publications than any of the other games on my list. Curiously, the overwhelming majority of these publications' 10-year-old Grand Theft Auto 4 Game of the Year blurbs remark that the third act of the game's narrative drags. In film criticism, the
Cheese, have you watched this extremely underrated show called Adam Alpha Teens on Machines? What is this title? What is this? Yeah, Alpha Teens on Machines. Where are you, like, seeing these French cartoons? Ah, frick. Where are you getting? No, the answer is I have not. But, like, where are you seeing these?
third act is generally one of the two of the three acts that must not drag for a film to be considered good, much less Film of the Year. 10 years ago, Grand Theft Auto 4 brought heavier, more realistic cars and a heavier, more realistic main character to its previously cartoon shallow series. At the time Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, critics and commentators wondered if the grittier, more logistical touches like tech...
Only one season, and it wasn't a French cartoon, I think. It was on Jetix. I mean, if you're gonna put any cartoon on Jetix that wasn't like a 4Kids cartoon, it would be a French cartoon. Fuck. Pizza shit.
While driving were a weird fad, or if they were something Rockstar had intended to incorporate into their series all along. 10 years later, Rockstar, well, they've only made 4 more games: L.A. Noire, Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Red Dead Redemption 2, each of which builds on this dedication to realism, sometimes to outright bubonic effect. Wow, I wrote comical effect, and for some reason said bubonic. I kind of wish I'd accidentally said bubonical, because that's like a super good word. Red Dead Redemption 2's burdensome logistical intrusions include shaving, bathing, and petting your horse when your horse gets scared. Speculating about the kind of weird realism that'll inevitably wind up in Grand Theft Auto 6 was almost as hilarious a pastime in 2018 as playing Red Dead Redemption 2 online. Where many video games aspire to look and feel and sound as alike as possible, and I know this from personal experience developing AAA games, no other video game will ever remotely be Metal Gear Solid 4. Even fans who had eagerly followed the series could not possibly have conjured the faintest preparation for the avalanche of theme, content, and stuff that gushed forth out of Metal Gear Solid 4 the instant a single tooth sank into it. For the first time in the series, the action took place across multiple open locations, with action spanning multiple genres. Early on, you enjoy the series' signature stealth, now with the added twist of avoiding both sides of a dynamic civil conflict. Later, you wear a trench coat and...
Anyway, I feel like you would enjoy the show. All the episodes are on YouTube, but don't watch on stream, because for some reason, that's when they want to get... Yeah, it's crazy. That's the only time they ever care about these fucking shows no one remembers.
Tail a man through a foggy Eastern European city by nightfall. I took a whole day off work to play Metal Gear Solid 4 as quote-unquote research. I analyzed every trailer and scrap of footage Kojima had expertly drip-fed the media leading up to the game's launch. I cruised through the entire game in a weekend, and at the end of the experience I was so exhausted I might have mistook my exhaust for disgust. The wild, hypnotic waves of dialogue refused to crystallize into meat within my memory. memory. When I finally reviewed Metal Gear Solid 4 on my blog, I called it an incoherent mess. Actually, in an effort to enact a simulacrum of the incoherence of said mess, I composed 24 whole massive game reviews and released them 3 per week as a countdown of the 25 best games of all time, just so I could reach number 1, only to declare it was
not
Metal Gear Solid 4. 10 years later, I remember my friend Stabo coming over to my house to play Metal Gear Solid 4 a week after the game's release. He didn't own a PlayStation 3 yet to play it at his own house, so he came over to mine. He was dying to play the game. However, he was skipping all of the cutscenes. I asked him, "Don't you even care about the story?" And he told me he had already watched all of the cutscenes on YouTube. Metal Gear Solid 4 was so densely packed with themes, motifs, Easter eggs, and stuff that my friend, a diehard of the series, considered his utmost concern when the game was finally released to pore over the lore before playing the game. Metal Gear Solid 4, in terms of sheer volume, generosity, and stufffulness, remains a benchmark of AAA story-driven video games. Nowadays, when we assess a AAA blockbuster, we can't help discussing its appeal to live stream viewers. So maybe Metal Gear Solid 4's respect for its audience and the behavior it encouraged in my friend Stabo was ahead of its time. My friend Stabo came over to my apartment in Ogikubo on the west side of Tokyo on Friday, April 25th, 2008. It was Friday evening and it was spring and thus it was still light out, so we did what any two guys in their late 20s whose significant others were coincidentally out of town at the same time would do on a Friday night in mid-spring. We walked 45 minutes to a Starbucks in Kichijoji. We drank a couple of grande chai lattes and then hopped up on a moderate dose of caffeine. We proceeded to cross the street and enter the Yodobashi camera store. Way upstairs, we saw that Valkyria Chronicles had been released on the PlayStation 3 that week. I held up its package and ruminated. Stabo and I had played a demo of the game together at Tokyo Game Show the previous autumn. It had left a curious impression. I said aloud to Stabo, "You know, Rieko Kodama did work on this." Stabo yelled, "Yeah?" Then I read the price tag out loud. Stabo's response was a scream. "Wow!" Then I literally said, and I remember this word for word, "For that money, I could probably buy an illegal dead dolphin at the fish market." The game was like $80. I mean, games are expensive in Japan. We always complain about games being $60 here. They're like, in Japan, everything is collector's edition prices all the time. Well, I bought it anyway. On the train to my house, Stabo said, "There's a party tonight, dude." It turned out he was wrong, though he also was not lying. As I unlocked my apartment's front door so we could drop off our stuff before heading back outside again, neither of us had the faintest notion that we were about to enter and then play Valkyria Chronicles for literally 60 straight hours. By the end of the weekend, the stack of Domino's pizza boxes in my apartment caused an instant financial headache to behold. Those pizzas had cost the equivalent of like $40 each. I ended up never writing a review of Valkyria Chronicles or talking much about it. My opinion of it has scarcely escaped the memory of that wild Coca-Cola guzzling weekend, yet it lives in my DNA even today. Valkyria Chronicles is a masterpiece. It somehow blended the best elements of real-time and turn-based strategy games, the best elements of first-person shooters and Japanese role-playing games, the best elements of graphical adventures and Japanese television dramas and anime into one perfectly coherent, one absolutely, sparklingly Sega Dreamcast-worthy experience. Each map of the game was like a cutscene married to a dungeon, married to a random battle, full of characters with personalities, so it was also pretty much like an RPG town. Valkyria Chronicles shows us that battles can be towns and not feel weird, and that this overflowing abundance of personality injects extreme catharsis into hardcore XCOM and/or Fire Emblem-like elements such as permanent unit death. Valkyria Chronicles raised my personal expectations for RPGs and strategy games to a bar of such height, I'm not sure any game will ever jump over it. Especially not its sequels. I'm saying Valkyria Chronicles 4 sucks. I'm sorry. People keep asking me if I'm going to make a video about it. I played enough of it to know that it just really sucks. I meant to somehow relate this game to Yakuza as another Sega game that's just full of a whole bunch of genres in a big, beautiful buffet burger bucket, and I guess I forgot to write that sentence. independence. Valve used to make video games. Valve's video games were always very good. In 2007, Valve published Portal, which I called the best game of that year. Today, I call Portal one of the best games of all time, though I call Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare the best game of 2007. In 2008, Valve published Left 4 Dead, another one of the best games of all time. I'll admit that I hate zombies. In video games, zombies are usually just an excuse to shoot something which is shaped like a human and bleeds. Zombies are usually a storyteller's way of saying, we don't want our main characters to kill people. Shooting a zombie is the vegetarian version of murder. Left 4 Dead's game design was so brilliant, however, that I abstained from my disdain for zombies to participate in many loud, dark nights playing online with friends across the ocean. Each of Left 4 Dead's incredibly replayable levels is a buffet table of fun. For my friends and I, Left 4 Dead was the 21st century equivalent of the cartoon character licensed arcade beat-em-ups of the 1990s. We were older in 2008 than we were in 1991 when we played Konami's X-Men the arcade game. We were also better at video games. We needed something harder, meaner, thinkier, yet no less joyful. Left 4 Dead was thus an incredible gift. 10 years later, its legacy is eerily subtle. One could dig deep and find some shred of evidence that its fast-paced player versus enemy structure normalized online cooperative play to an extent that allowed multiplayer online battle arenas such as Valve's own Dota 2 to later thrive. Likewise, we could say that its simplified, sublimely arcade-style survival mechanics paved the way for the creation of mods in other games, which later birthed PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. From there, it's only a brief jump to comparing Left 4 Dead and Fortnite. Well, now that I say this out loud, I guess that Fortnite originally did start as a game about cooperating to defend against a horde of zombies, so comparing Left 4 Dead to Fortnite actually isn't weird at all. Most importantly for me personally, we can see a glimmer of Left 4 Dead in 2018's brilliant Warhammer Vermintide 2, which is basically just Left 4 Dead with swords instead of guns, and horror-striking rat people instead of zombies. Gears of War 1 brought the 1990s back to 2006. Gears of War 2 brought 2006's 1990s back to 2008 and forever after. Gears of War 1 sold developers and publishers on the technological possibilities of Unreal Engine 3. 2 years after Gears of War 1, I'd been working on a AAA game in Unreal Engine 3 for 2 years. EA was publishing our game. 3 times during the calendar year of 2008, EA's producers flew all the way from California to Tokyo. They always brought us the latest build of Dead Space. Taking pains, they walked us through the first 2 hours of Dead Space multiple times each visit. I think they were trying to encourage us to craft an effective opening vertical slice in our own game. When, in November, I finally played Gears of War 2, it was as both a rabid fan of Gears of War 1 and its PC level editor, and as a AAA video game developer who had played over 60 hours of the first 2 hours of Dead Space. In terms of second-to-second punch value, I was critically prepared to declare that Gears of War 2 blew away Dead Space, though no other critics seemed to agree with my admittedly bizarre perspective. Both Gears of War 2 and Dead Space were gunning for the same idea. They each aspired to become some sort of an unholy Frankensteinian hybrid Oscar-baiting Hollywood prestige drama action blockbuster video game. Video games didn't actually have their equivalent of the Academy Awards in 2008, and 10 years later in 2018 they sorta still don't. The Game Awards is definitely getting there though. 2008 was 1 year after BioShock and Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. BioShock and Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare were 1 year after Gears of War. Gears of War 2 thus arrived as a forward locomotive action drama sci-fi Resident Evil 4-like, with a rich orchestral score, Zelda-like puzzle moments, Contra-like thematic purity, Doom-like gore, and Oscar-clippable voice acting moments. In addition to hulking, oatmeal-skinned subterranean alien brutes and machine guns with chainsaw bayonets on them, Gears of War 2 also had a scene where a character had to point-blank mercy headshot his own wife and then weep. In 2008, I gleefully called Gears of War 2, quote-unquote, video games. The video game. 10 years later, the groundwork Gears of War 2 laid in the art of carefully constructing 3D, slow-paced, third-person action worlds still ripples beneath the surface of award-winning beefcake adventures such as God of War 2018. In 2018, I love it like a brother, and seeing as I still detect other game designers' cold, mathematical, analytical blueprints of Gears of War 2's moment-to-moment pacing in many AAA blockbusters, I'm guessing the whole game industry will never not love Gears of War 2 and its director Clifford Cliffy B. Bleszinski. Did you hear that, Cliff? We love you, and when you're here, you're family. I have never had malaria. However, in 2018, I did contract bacterial pneumonia because of some cough frictional bronchitis that resulted from my catching the flu because I didn't get a flu shot because I always get a cold the day after I get a flu shot, and I didn't want to get a cold because I was working overnight, literally on a video about Red Dead Redemption 2. When I did go to get a flu shot, they asked me if I was feeling sick, and I said I was, and they said you can't get a flu shot if you're feeling sick, and then I ended up getting the flu, from which I coughed so much I got bronchitis, from which I coughed so much I got pneumonia. This is all like 100% true, by the way. Hey, at least it wasn't tuberculosis. Because of my pneumonia, I had to follow a strict medication regimen for 6 days, during which once daily I had to swallow a horse-choking pill containing the exact antibiotic used to treat malaria. 2008's Far Cry 2, a sequel to 2004's Far Cry, is an open-world first-person shooting adventure in which the main character happens to be dying of malaria. Every 30 real-world minutes or so, you have to take a pill or suffer the unpredictable nature of the worsening symptoms of the disease. Far Cry 2 concerns a whole lot more than just malaria, though we don't have time to dissect its entire brilliance. 10 years later, Far Cry 2 remains an oft-whispered-about, gleaming example of the elevating power of excellent game design. Every interaction the player performs while scurrying about in Far Cry 2's diamond-bloody African Civil War plot drips with a perfect balance of fun juice. The player can make choices. The plot is somewhat open-ended, yet the experimental structure does not interfere with the sparklingly good gunplay, except when your gun jams. And when your gun jams, that's hilarious. The multiplayer modes are snappy. The endgame map is adorable. It's an object your player literally holds in his hands. All this happened 10 years before Sea of Thieves. In 2008, every publication wishing to usher in an era of open-ended narratives championed Fallout 3 as their game of the year. Though for me, it was all about the much more focused Far Cry 2, and it still is. Far Cry 2 contains just about exactly as much open-endedness as I want in a narrative, and I realize it's not actually that much. For the entirety of the year 2008, I worked full-time as a game designer at a game development studio called Grasshopper Manufacture in Tokyo, Japan. I worked on games like No More Heroes and No More Heroes 2. Prior to that, I'd worked at Sony Computer Entertainment Japan for several years. During all this time, as a hobby, I kept a blog where I reviewed video games. One of my readers, named Jonathan Blow, sent me a prototype of his game called Braid. When I was in San Francisco for a weekend in late 2007, Jonathan Blow took me to dinner and asked me what I'd thought of his game. I confessed that I had only played through the first world. He emailed me many times over the next several months, asking me if I'd finished the game yet and if I was going to write a review. Shortly before the game's release on Xbox Live Arcade in August of 2008, he emailed me again to ask if I'd played it and if I was going to write a review. I told him I had finished it, and I loved it. I said it was probably my favorite game of the year. He never replied. 4 months later, I published 2 reviews on my blog for my game of the year and the runner-up. I called Braid my game of the year. I emailed Jonathan Blow a link to the review. He never replied. I never spoke to him ever again. I feel like maybe if I'd had my review ready on the day the game had come out, instead of waiting until the end of the year to call it my favorite game of the year, while people everywhere else were also calling it their favorite game of the year, maybe me and Jonathan Blow would be friends today. We might have had many great adventures. Maybe he would have let me drive his Tesla. Instead, I treated this genius artist as just another reader of my weird little blog. When he told me how much he loved my writing, I immediately judged him as a weirdo, because who would like my writing, which was something I had made? The truth is, I envied him for his ability to make something huge and passionate mostly by himself. When we met in person, I instantly gained the sense that here was a brilliant man hurtling toward great adoration and money. Meeting Jonathan Blow made me question what I'd been doing with my own life. I was spending 60 hours a week trying to turn a guy with great jackets' wild ideas into actionable project management schedule items. Why was I writing all those huge, sprawling reviews of video games in my free time? Clearly, I was trying to convince myself to leave my comfortable job and make my own game. Instead, I met this guy and I envied him, and maybe that's why I didn't play his game right away. Meeting Jonathan Blow made me feel, well, the way I still feel now in 2018, which is I really should have studied computer science in college. Instead, I studied languages. I can speak Farsi, I can speak Russian, and I waited until I was 26 years old to learn anything about programming. In a pit of self-loathing, similar to the one I'm surprisingly finding myself in right now while I read this, when the end of 2008 rolled around, I convinced myself that it was the right thing to do. It was the decent thing to do, to review Jonathan Blow's game on my blog in a fearless tone of voice that ignored all the other voices yelling about its greatness, and call it the Game of the Year. Yet even then, I felt that I could have and should have been the first voice yelling about it. He had chosen me as an ambassador. Man, he even named the main character of the game after me. Well, I did what I could. Too little, too late. He never talked to me ever again. 10 years ago, Braid set a shining example to a generation of independent game developers. 10 years later, the puzzle platformer genre it pioneered still won't go away. Today, Braid's legacy lives in a million places throughout every digital game store, within the undying appeal of retro aesthetics and simple elevator-pitchable core concepts. This year, we have the brilliant technical platform action of Celeste and the mind-rending puzzle narrative of Return of the Obra Dinn. These two brilliant games each owe Braid at least one little tiny handful of something. Space Invaders Extreme arrived in celebration of the original game's 30th anniversary. Like Namco's Pac-Man Championship Edition from 2007, Space Invaders Extreme kept the essence of the original game intact, while polishing every fundamental aspect of the game's design to a razor's edge. The friction of Space Invaders Extreme astounded me in 2008, and it continues to inspire my own game design aspirations in 2018. The original Space Invaders is the second video game I can recall ever playing. Its mechanics burrowed deep into my brain early in my childhood. The thrill of releasing a bullet, the expectation that it will land in a target, and the suspense of watching it travel the length of a screen will never leave my highest estimation. Some say Pac-Man and some say Donkey Kong. For me, Space Invaders is the original good video games. Despite the poetic nature of my early childhood memories regarding it, Space Invaders' original form did not lack areas which benefited from improvement and modernization. We often use the term love letter to describe a retro game remake or remaster, though seldom does that vocabulary apply with such viscerality as to Space Invaders Extreme. In adding hit pauses and sticky friction crunches of perfect duration and magnitude, in mixing game sound effects into its music, Space Invaders Extreme transcends the genre of its ancestor. Space Invaders Extreme achieves its becoming of the perfect rhythm game, simultaneously as it becomes the perfect shooting game. Though it eventually came out on PSP, Xbox 360, and PC, the Nintendo DS version hit with the hardest impact for me. The Nintendo DS outsold all other game consoles in Japan in 2008. iPhones were yet brand new. Space Invaders Extreme arrived as the platonic ideal to which all mobile games would always fail to reach. In my eyes, anyway. I played Space Invaders Extreme every day on the subway to work. I played it sitting down on the way to work. I played it standing up on the way home. After playing a big-budget AAA blockbuster on my television after dinner. I even played Space Invaders Extreme lying down in bed. I always played Space Invaders Extreme with earbuds in my ears, except when I played it on public toilets. You always need your ears on a public toilet. Space Invaders Extreme transformed my Nintendo DS Lite into a Walkman. 10 years later, in 2018, Taito re-released Space Invaders Extreme on Steam to celebrate Space Invaders' 40th anniversary. I meant to fill in this point here a little bit. What I'm trying to point out is that they re-released the 30th anniversary remaster to mark the 40th anniversary. They didn't need to make a new 40th anniversary remake remaster because, I mean, simply making Space Invaders Extreme to mark the 30th anniversary of Space Invaders instead of just like releasing an ice-cold, faithful port of Space Invaders, they were admitting that Space Invaders could benefit from some kind of a remaster. That's why they made a remaster, and now, 10 years later, on the 40th anniversary, they're confident enough in their 30th anniversary remaster that they're releasing that instead of the original or a new remaster. They're basically acknowledging that they made a perfect video game 10 years ago. Also in 2018, Tetsuya Mizuguchi added his favorite variety of expensive music and digital pyrotechnics to Tetris. Tetsuya Mizuguchi's Tetris effect pretty much amounts to the Space Invaders Extreme of Tetris. Meanwhile, Nintendo and Atari and everybody who knows how to make a plastic mold sells truckloads of mini retro consoles by the minute. I like to think that Space Invaders Extreme did not make retro games cool. It did something greater. It proved that all games were always already at least a little bit cool. No matter what Microsoft did, they could not sell the Xbox 360 in Japan. They must have hired some real big brain experts at some point because they poured hot molten money into Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi's new studio, Mistwalker. Mistwalker released Blue Dragon in 2007. Mistwalker released Lost Odyssey, and well, they released it in Japan at the end of 2007, though they released it in the West in 2008, early 2008. I think it was February 2008, February 12th. I have to look it up. I think it was February 12th, 2008. I feel like somewhere else on this list I used the Japanese release date for a game that didn't come out in the West until 2009. I'm just gonna let this be inconsistent because I want to talk about Lost Odyssey. Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey are two of the very best traditional Japanese role-playing games ever made. At the time, in Japan at least, barely anyone bought either of them. It didn't make any sense to me at the time. I suppose I fancied myself a true connoisseur. Unlike the quote-unquote average consumer, I did not blindly follow brand names like Final Fantasy. I followed creators, and Lost Odyssey was absolutely a game by creators I followed. Its director was Final Fantasy's creator, now older and wiser. The music was by Final Fantasy's Nobuo Uematsu. The amazing world-class character designs were by Takehiko Inoue, author and artist of two manga masterpieces, Vagabond and Slam Dunk. Parts of the story were written and presented in novella form by acclaimed author Kiyoshi Shigematsu. Here was a game whose mission statement included the words world-class talent. Lost Odyssey is big and long and emotional and wild. Lost Odyssey has more twists and turns than a large bucket full of skinny worms. 10 whole years before 2018's God of War, Lost Odyssey flaunted a somber narrative about an immortal man, starting to lose his memories after 1,000 years of witnessing the world's vain conflicts. I have recommended this game to countless people over the past 10 years, and very few of them have ever listened to me. Maybe because I refused to give them any details about the plot, so I will take it upon myself to spoil a little bit of its plot today. About 20 hours into Lost Odyssey, your main character meets two small children. It turns out their dying old mother is our main character's daughter. She remembers him and remarks that he has not aged a day. Try as he might, he cannot remember her. It is as heartbreaking as it is bizarre. This moment represents only the tip of the iceberg of this game's ability to shred your mind. I think about Lost Odyssey at least once per week. I feel little bits and pieces of its DNA in games like Undertale. Everyone I know who likes it seems to like it a lot. Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, is such a fan of this game even today that it is free to download on the Xbox One backward compatibility program. The best game of 2008 was one I took for granted. As a lifelong fan of games by Japanese action science laboratory Treasure Incorporated, I without hesitation purchased their new game Bangai Spirits when it emerged in Japanese retail stores on March 19th, 2008. I devoured its tutorial levels on the train ride home. I spent a weekend shredding through its dozens of ridiculously difficult stages. I dabbled with its level editor. My friend Stabo came over on Saturday afternoon and experienced less than 15 minutes of the game on my Nintendo DS Lite before he stood up and declared that we must go to Akihabara immediately so that he could buy his own copy of this game. We sat in the Skylark Gusto Diner by Suehiro-cho Station. We each made a terrible stage. We challenged one another. We screamed so loud, I wonder now why we didn't get kicked out of the whole city. I composed an exuberant review on my blog. I gave it a perfect score, and I did not just hand those out like candy. At the time, I described Bangai Spirits as the game God would play if God played video games. I said that prior to my playing Bangai Spirits, my ambitions included acquisition of a yacht and a mansion, though after Bangai Spirits, I only desired a hyperbaric chamber, an IV drip, and a DS Lite plugged into a reliable power source. Yet 10 years later, I realized that all that praise sufficed to taking the game sorely for granted. All that praise failed to communicate to my readers or even to myself that I would go on to play and think about this game nearly constantly for the next decade. Bangai Spirits' level editor ultimately left the biggest impression. The level editor functions entirely with the Nintendo DS stylus. The level editor objects' purposes always possess crystal clarity. Place an object and then nominate it as the goal, and the game intuits that whatever the player can do to interact with that object is the goal of the level. If you nominate a breakable block as the goal, break it to end the level. Now you can set up enemies, power-ups, bombs, obstacles. You can create entirely different genres of game. You can make a two-player baseball game. With more potency even than Braid, Bangai Spirits shouted an empowering message to independent game developers. Beneath its cartoon robot facade, I glimpsed thousands of abstract possibilities. 5 years after Bangai Spirits, I lived in Oakland, California, and spent several months working with my friends Brent Porter and Michael Kerwin on an ambitious game. When I had the opportunity to demonstrate my game in Japan, I literally took it to Treasure's office and knocked on the door unannounced. I played my own game with my heroes, and they said they loved it. Maybe they loved it. My game didn't make any money, though me and my friends Brent Porter and Michael Kerwin are still trying to make something as good as Bangai Spirits with our upcoming game, Truck Heck. Here my notes say that I want to, quote-unquote, connect Bangai Spirits' do-it-yourself ethos somehow to the avalanche of increasingly excellent independent games which began in 2008 and continues even today. Then somehow mention the building element of Fortnite. Then contrive a reason to mention Minecraft. Though now that I've said Truck Heck out loud into a microphone, I have no idea how to stop thinking about Truck Heck. All I want to do is play Truck Heck. That's why I want to make Truck Heck. I want to make Truck Heck because the Nintendo Switch's screen is a lot bigger than the Nintendo DS's screen. I want Truck Heck to contain exactly everything I love about Bangai Spirits and also involve driving a truck which can drift and leave big tire tracks in ugly dirt. And just like that, my reminiscent mood has evaporated. I'm back in 2018 and I'm looking down the barrel of 2019. Will 2019 be the year of Truck Heck? I, for one, was born stupid, ready to find out. However, I will not die hungry. Video games forever. Kotaku.com. The subject of... Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching Kotaku.com, Game of the Decade Edition. It's that time of the decade again, the end of it. Seeing as the mysteries of the universe conspired 3 years ago to begin depositing money into my bank account twice monthly in exchange for my once weekly histrionic microphone performance of my opinions regarding interactive electronic animated picture contests, I'd feel like a criminal rube if I did not regale you with my selections for the games of the decade. If we're going to choose a number of pieces of media to describe a decade, we might as well choose 10. Choosing more than 10 feels like bad taste. How can we choose just 10 works to summarize a decade? I feel like answering this question constitutes a slightly more interesting exercise than actually explaining my choices for the 10 best games of the decade. As I sat and prepared to compose my list, sentimentality and scientific interest contended for my attention. I wondered, should I simply choose the 10 games I liked the most, which happened to possess release date timestamps between midnight on January 1st, 2010 and 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, 2019? Or should I warm up my microscope and calculatedly discern the 10 games that quote-unquote defined this decade? Do I make this list for me, or do I make this list for you? I care about you a lot. Though my doctor says I need to care about myself too, so let's make this list a mixture of me and you. Furthermore, I've seen a lot of decades. I have just now entered the 5th decade of my life. I know that decades sprawl nebulously. By the time you're halfway through your 30s, you might start thinking in and speaking of decades. Except these decades don't always begin on a calendar year that ends with a 0, nor do they necessarily begin with a specific relevant moment or situate with that relevant moment exactly in the middle. You sift out your memory from time to time and gaze upon chunks of years, and sometimes those chunks are 10 years. We're all humans. I know something you don't. You know something I don't. The importance and heft of our individual and collective subjective experiences far outweigh any brazenly idiotic numerological exercise such as defining the best games of the decade. So, having osmosed much sentimentality, scientificity, and philosophy over the course of the first 4 decades of my own life, knowing myself too well, I ultimately decided that to compose this list, I would need to do it fast. I would need to draw hard lines. I knew that if I dwelled too long on the composition of this list, I would begin a vortex spiral of reverie all the way back to my perfect life at the start of 2010. I was engaged. I was living in a 6-bedroom house. My band was playing bigger and bigger venues. It's been long enough since that time that I can confess right now that yes, my band was bad on purpose, and I was not being defensive when I said that back then. Nor was I being quote-unquote ironic when I said that I liked the bad music that we were making. I like dumb stuff, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. As of January 2010, I was working as a full-time game designer at a AAA video game studio. 6 months later, I was penniless on a beach on the north shore of Oahu. I guess there are worse places to be penniless. 5 months later, I was well, you can see what I mean about why I shouldn't dwell on this too long. If you would like to hear a more sentimental, anecdotal take on my decade in video games, 2010 through 2019, just check out the Thursday, December 12th, 2019 episode of the Bad End podcast, and you can hear me talk a lot about my video game industry experience in the 2010s. In order to compose my personal list of the best video games of the 2010s decade, I began by shutting myself in my bedroom and turning out the lights. I laid in my bed in the dark. I put earbuds into my ears. I set up a 60-minute critical thinking program on my favorite binaural beats app. I put on an eye mask and spent exactly 60 minutes in my mind palace. The way I wrote this and the way I'm reading it make it sound like some sort of elaborate joke, though. I mean, it's actually not that weird to just lay down in the dark and think about something away from your laptop or notes or paper or whatever. Just try to see how much you can think of. I challenged myself to think of as many 2010s games as I could in that 1 hour in my mind palace. Dozens of game experiences floated up before me. Mostly I saw flickers of gameplay, though in consideration for my chronic headache-suffering future self who has to edit this, let's pretend the games occurred to me as a parade of box arts. With each flicker of gameplay, I remembered moments in my life. I remembered smells, tastes. I remembered temperatures of pleasant breezes. I remembered people and conversations. When the Binaural Beats program ended, I gingerly sat before my laptop and typed out the names of 29 games. I performed a quick Wikipedia fact-checking to make sure that all of those games had actually been released during the 2010s. Of course, this fact-checking was unnecessary because I had used my mind palace. You'd think that by now I would have learned to trust my mind palace. I had gotten 29 of 29 right. Before beginning to prune my list of 29 games down to a list of 10 games, I scheduled a tweet for 10:31 p.m. on Sunday, December 8th, 2019. I would have scheduled that tweet for 10:08 p.m., though I knew for a fact that my most devoted haters would view that timestamp with suspicion. In my tweet, I asked you, the prospective viewer, to presuppose the entries on my list. I did this as a temperance exercise, so that by the time you started tweeting at me with games you had assumed I had considered, I would have already finished composing a list, writing a script, reading that script into a microphone, and editing this video that you're about to watch. The fact is, the 2010s were the worst decade of my life. And that's saying something, because the 1990s literally involved me attending a high school. By asking you to tweet out game names at me long after it was too late for me to go back and change my list, I would be begging for a pain that enriched my own private reflection on this heckish decade. I will keep that reflection to myself and to the listeners of the Thursday, December 12th, 2019 episode of the Bad End podcast. Now, with the tweet destined to launch in 48 hours, bittersweetedly aware of impending regret, I began my reverie. First, I needed to prune my list of 29 games down to 10 games using a scalpel made of science. I allotted myself 10 minutes for this task. When considering games of the decade, would I pick games that pioneered trends? Or would I pick the games that best embodied said trends, whether they originated them or not? Would I allow myself to pick games that did not commit any innovation at all and instead revised established genres? Games that eschewed all zeitgeist in favor of the old ways? Most importantly, would I prioritize games that best represented this decade? Or would I select games that I predict will exact the most influence over the decades to come? Would I play the role of historian or prophet? I had allotted myself only 10 minutes for the task of selecting my 10 games, so that I might not dwell too hard on the rules that defined a game, quote-unquote, of the decade, rather than philosophize into the void or argue endlessly with the abyss of myself. I would use the science in my heart. I gritted my teeth and I ripped that decade off like a band-aid. 1 minute before the 10-minute timer went off, I was staring at my list of 10 games. In that one silent minute, I decided on an ironclad rule. I would not change the list. Next, I set about writing justifications for every game's place on the list. This would be the hard part. I could definitely write 30,000 words about any given game on this list off the top of my head. I could make a 3-hour in-depth review video of any of these games. At this exact point in my life, I promise you that I know myself well enough to know that if I did not impose rigid structures on everything I do professionally, I would have died of starvation in March of 2012. Were it not for my rigid outlining discipline, I would have written 3-hour scripts for each of the 29 games on my initial list. You, the viewers, sometimes comment that my videos are long, though here let me promise you, were it not for my overflowing discipline, on this occasion, you'd be sitting down to watch an 87-hour video right now. Instead, knowing that my lecture speaking voice covers approximately 150 words per minute, I limited myself to maintain an average of 400 words per game on this list. So that I could manufacture some sort of prosaic flow, I would write the segments in the order you see them in this video. In the spirit of the 2010s' zeitgeisty roguelikishness, I implemented a genie system. The genie system is a secret weapon of my own invention that I have long employed when writing the fiction that I never publish. It goes like this. Once I write an outline, that outline is set in stone. However, when writing the actual text, I am allowed 3 wishes. I can change up to 3 items from the outline, no more. Wow, it's almost like writing a script for a video about my favorite games of the decade is itself one of my favorite games of the decade. That didn't feel like quite enough restriction, so I then, slightly in the spirit of the 2010s zeitgeist of live-streamed, off-the-cuff, genuine personality, I limited myself to spending no more than exactly 10 minutes writing each blurb. This required me to compose just 40 words of polished prose per minute. I can type 40 words per minute on a Victorian-era typewriter. That's actually true. We don't need to talk about that. So I knew it would be easier than
taking a dump
on this Philco Majest Touch 2. 10 minutes per 400 words would allow me time for 2 drafts and 2 revision passes to get each segment under the word count. So now I let my fingers tap dance all over my Philco Majest Touch 2 keyboard. In a way, ain't haste the ultimate honesty? If a game don't brain gush enough joy juice during a type frenzy on some sweet cherry browns, can we truly call its memory felt? I don't know, man. Let's get this video in the coffin already. Here we go. Number 10. Destiny. Developers at Bungie, who were fans of the game I had been developing, sent me a pre-release code for Destiny. I plunked around in it lonelily for many days, imagining the thrill of playing it with friends. On the day the game released to the public, I was waiting for a friend to get online when a kid called to inquire about buying my car. I needed to sell my car so that I could pay my rent because the game I was developing, the game some Destiny developers had liked, had cost me all of my money. The kid came to look at my car. He brought his dad and cash. I sold my 2007 Mazda 3 sedan to a teenager while playing Destiny on its release date. Because I was living in Oakland, California at the time, I sold it at a profit. That night, I played Destiny Strikes with several game designer friends. Many of us were jaded freelance Zynga veterans. The power of the service game, ton of bricks us. Not quite single player, not quite an MMO. On the 15th anniversary of the launch of the Sega Dreamcast, Destiny was Phantasy Star Online Reborn. Destiny was American Monster Hunter. Destiny gave me 5-minute goals, 10-minute goals, 20-minute strikes, and 30-minute campaign set pieces. I could pick Destiny up and while away a minute at a time grinding on patrol while listening into conference calls on a single earbud. Destiny was Dragon Quest with guns where the party members were my real-life game designer friends. Loudly we yelled MOBA lingo about aggroing such and such boss. Our experiences in genres elsewhere carried us. In addition to its bigness and its expensiveness, here was a pristinely designed video game. Yet a phantom menace loomed. Behind Destiny's gregarious generosity, other publishers spectated, coldly considering calculating criminal trespasses in future similar products. Destiny might not have had loot boxes itself, though I know for sad fact that its myriad elegant game design solutions trickled into the think tanks that weaponized those behavioral psychology abominations that dominated discourse later in the decade. And number 9, Super Mario Maker 2. On September 11th, 2015, I was in the middle of finishing the development of my online cross-platform competitive multiplayer video game for the first time. I had no clue we would have to finish it again. I drove over to Target in the 1999 Nissan Altima some of my ex-Zynga game developer friends had left at my house before they accidentally moved to Thailand. I bought Super Mario Maker. I took it home. I made one level. I joked to my girlfriend that it felt too much like my job. I played some other players' levels. I joked to my girlfriend that these other players probably didn't have the same job as me. Soon I stumbled upon a simple, rustic level of pleasant graphical presentation and hangoutable flow. I thought, if you give it enough time, this game's gonna be full of levels this good. Eventually, I was right. Though also, Mario Maker's cup soon runneth the heck over with excruciating Kaizo meat grinder levels. In perfect synchronization with the advent of Twitch.tv as certifiable mainstream culture, virtuosic performance at ice-cold, deadly Mario levels became an art form unto itself. After years in the shadows of the hacking community, superstars now emerged to entertain a legion of spectators, all of whom could look at the screen and immediately know that they are not good enough to do that. This worked as well as it did because way more than enough game likers have played a Mario game. Mario Maker thus made Mario a sport. That sport made Grand Pooh Bear Red Bull Esports' golden boy. I spent hundreds of hours playing other players' levels and hundreds more crafting my own elaborate Mario playgrounds in Super Mario Maker 1. I experienced many sandboxes of my own joy and the joy of others. I haven't looked at other Games of the Decade lists yet, though I'm sure a lot of critics are going to put Minecraft on there. No way, buddy. Minecraft sure did light the zeitgeist candle on user-generated game content. Mario Maker, however, owns it. For example, Towerfall developer Matt Thorson made Mario Maker levels before going on to make my pick for 2018 Game of the Year, Celeste. How many Minecraft house builders have gone on to make a game that I consider Game of the Year? Mario Maker 2 is Mario Maker, except better, fuller, richer. Mario Maker 2 replaced Mario Maker 1. Also, it's on the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch is the console of the decade. I baited Red Bull Esports' golden boy Grand Pooh Bear with a Twitter DM. I asked him for his favorite game of the decade. He replied that Mario Maker 1 and 2 would be too obvious. He said his game of the decade would be Spelunky HD. What this tells me is that Grand Pooh Bear is so sharply talented at predicting and then navigating heck gauntlets crafted by other human minds that he more appreciates these sinister challenges calculated by a computer. I should have known that Grand Pooh Bear's legendary reflexes would never let him take such basic bait. Number 8. Flappy Bird. Social media was younger, politics were not yet quite so screamy. Something in the air in spring of 2013 inclined the average free time having Earth person to enjoy being beat up by a video game. Flappy Bird took over social media for a period of many loud weeks, during which opinions, which we had yet to ubiquitously begin abbreviating as takes, oscillated between beat my score and this game sucks. And Flappy Bird did suck. More than any game worthy of this list has the right to, honestly. Its suckage doesn't matter. I played it and I loved every floppy second of it. That's because my friends also played it. Flappy Bird offered the opportunity for me to finally play a video game as a bandwagoner and not as a tastemaker. It reminded me of a lecture Bennett Foddy had given about his Game of the 2000s decade runner-up, QWOP. Foddy had said, frequent failed states should be funny. In QWOP, failure is funny because that protagonist sure is a basket of noodles. In Flappy Bird, the humor requires deep flickers of introspection, which enhances its potency. Death in Flappy Bird is hilarious because the game's single input induces the character to perform a physical action of such transient ephemerality, preceding a nosedive of an unpredictable trajectory, muscle memorizable only to the most philosophical of Herculeses. On top of this, the game's collision is too honest. Usually in an action game, the player character's hitbox is significantly smaller than their graphics. The never put an easy mode into Dark Souls crowd would spontaneously combust if they knew 1% of the lies action games perpetrate that I know. In Flappy Bird, the hitbox is exactly the size of the character. This makes death fast, cheap, and eventually predictable if its ridiculousness enthralls you long enough for you to get good. Flappy Bird became a meme unto itself during a year when elementary school students did not yet speak the word meme. In 2013, Flappy Bird amplified the message of Anna Anthropy's 2012 book, Rise of the Video Game Zinesters, that anyone could make a video game. Eventually, everyone on social media and their little sister knew that Flappy Bird was making $50,000 a day on ad revenue. So not only could anyone make video games, anyone could get rich off of them. Or so many enterprising entrepreneurs in the San Francisco Bay Area wanted to believe when they came asking me if I could make them something like Flappy Bird. Buddy, I said, I bet the guy who made Flappy Bird couldn't make you something like Flappy Bird. He eventually released Swing Copters, which was genuinely great. On the other hand, I was still right. The entrepreneurs paid me anyway. Not quite 50 grand a day, though it paid the bills for a couple months.
Here's number 7.
Overwatch. Overwatch stands in on this list for all of Blizzard's work during the 2010s decade. That's not a cop-out. I believe Overwatch stands in as a work unto itself for all of Blizzard's work, period. It is their crowning achievement. In the first year of the 2010s, Blizzard gave us StarCraft II: Wings of Liberty, a game that drilled down into strictly specific design criteria of the real-time strategy genre. The efforts of StarCraft II's designers would clarify the visions of esports designers, crystallizing the MOBA which powered the heart of the Twitch.tv zeitgeist. With Diablo III, Blizzard flexed their expertise in presenting tactile action. With Hearthstone, they perpetrated a crystalline act of pure game design. With Heroes of the Storm, they looked at the MOBAs that had looked at StarCraft II, then they made a better one, though I guess nobody cares as much about a better MOBA as they do about a popular MOBA. Overwatch, meanwhile, brings it all together. Overwatch is a genre-fluid, multidisciplinary renaissance game. It's a team-based first-person shooter. Its characters are ostensibly MOBA heroes, making the team composition metagame as layered as that of any collectible card game. Its aesthetic borrows lovingly from classic games such as Street Fighter. Overwatch is cooperative deck building, dovetailing into competitive first-person shooter basketball action. Overwatch shows the power of diversity and flexibility, both of game genre and of team composition. It teaches players to complement one another. At the time Overwatch came out, I was preparing to publish my own team-based online multiplayer game and already beginning to feel deep fear that we'd be blasted into irrelevance by game developers huger than us before we could get ours out the door. Overwatch, together with Rocket League, showed us that more genres than just MOBA, shooters, and fighting games could fit under the competitive games umbrella. Number 6, it's a tie between The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Witcher 3. I'm invoking the genie rule for the first time. Here's my first wish. I want to allow a tie. Now let me confess, I have not completed The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or The Witcher 3. In fact, I haven't played either of them long enough to even have any idea which one I will probably ultimately love more. I'm pretty sure it'd be The Witcher 3, though pretty sure is not good enough for the purposes of this very scientific list. Without playing more than half of either of these games, I can confidently state that Breath of the Wild and The Witcher 3 are two absolutely perfect video games for exactly me. And I think 6th place on a top 10 list is the perfect place to exert my utmost selfishness. I can already hear a particular type of commenter cracking his knuckles. Look, buddy, yes, I can decide a game is one of the best games I've ever played without finishing it. I am 40 goddarn years old. I have played literally thousands of video games. And while sometimes a game that starts strong middles poorly and ends disastrously, though sometimes even I experience critical surprises, I know myself and video games well enough to know that these two games are perfect. I don't believe in backlogs. I have accepted that I own video games I will never play. Also, as a former advertising industry professional, I have developed an ironclad immunity to pre-release hype. When you're still thinking at least once weekly about a video game you've been wanting to play for 5 years, that's how you know it's good. And I think I've gotten pretty good at identifying when a game is going to be that kind of game for me. So let me just say that that's The Witcher 3 and Breath of the Wild. Also, I've played every other Zelda, and I've played every other Witcher game, and I've even read all of the Witcher books. Also, I've played all the way through Red Dead Redemption 2 and loved every second of it. I loved its hyper-authentic cowboy dialogue. I loved its huge, slow pace and its plotting logistics. In a decade of yearly, factory-farmed, defamiliarized AAA Zelda-likes such as Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs, the presence of these two bombastically enormous, fruitcake-dense, progressively designed modern sword guy adventures warms my heart to explosion temperature. I went like way off the script for a bit in that part about backlogs, so that doesn't count toward my word count average, just in case you're keeping score at home. And number 5, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. In one of the first videos I ever made for Kotaku.com, I asserted that PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds was the game of the decade. I have not changed my mind. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is the game of the decade, by way of scientific fact. Due to a cocktail of sentimentality and prosaic fanciness so mysterious its exact nature is a mystery even to me, it winds up at number 5 on this, my personal list. Usually right about now I would say I don't make the rules, though in this case I did make the rules, and my rules led me here. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds' video game industry significance is manifold. First of all, this is the decade where we got used to basically seeing Xbox Live gamer tags on the evening news. Why not have one in the name of a game? I mean, why stop there? Get this guy a line of canned soup. PUBG, as they call it, started as a mod of an existing game, Arma 3. To put it briefly, this mod gave some players exactly what they wanted, slightly less survival logisticality, and a whole lot more fast-paced ownage. Perhaps silently, a rune-encrusted stone deep within the bedrock of the game-liker mentality has thrummed with a wish since time immemorial. The wish for a 100-player battle royale. With so many players queuing up to kill one another, the game is practically procedural. Human behavior is the roguelike. Human psychology is the darkest soul. This is a very 2010s video game origin story. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds' shocking popularity presented its maker the fateful choice between going home or going big. He went big. The resulting game solidified the battle royale genre with such a deafening sonic boom, ripping across Twitch and YouTube, that Epic immediately turned their proverbial cruise ship clockwise and steered their vagabond game Fortnite toward Party Island. Fortnite quickly became the biggest game in the world and the certifiable biggest game of the decade. Let's not mince words. It did this by painting PUBG with a Halloween store dumpster diving wardrobe, and also by being free, and also by having quote-unquote dances. Its shooting is good, its building is bad. It has persistent in-game environmental storytelling. It has unfinished menus. Fortnite is the 2010s in video games. Heck, Fortnite is also the 2010s in politics, social media, and mainstream entertainment. And Fortnite will be the 2020s in video games. Fortnite deserves to be the game of the decade instead of PUBG. Well, I'm going to take a stand and root for the underdog, because this is my list. While we're on the subject of a dog that is under something, number 4, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. My friend Bennett Foddy made this video game about a man in a pot trying to climb a mountain of trash using only a Yosemite hammer. It is not a sledgehammer. During the game, Bennett Foddy himself provides a pseudo-inspirational lecture in voiceover about the nobility of failure. I say pseudo-inspirational because it's likely he's just trying to make you mad. Also, he regales you with the history of a video game called Sexy Hiking. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy arrived a post-Flappy Bird meme in a year when even kindergartners knew the word meme. Sublime in its flow, cold in its style, utterly honest in its ridiculousness, hilarious especially during its disasters. It inspired many years' worth of screaming YouTuber video footage compilations. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy shows video game likers wrestling with themselves. If Bennett Foddy's favorite game of all time, the cup and ball, were a person, it would be proud of the utterly palpable let me try that-ishness of its godchild Bennett Foddy's achievement. If anyone objects to me putting my friend's game on this list, by the way, buddy, I became friends with Bennett Foddy because I liked Quap, and because I thought I could leech talent off of him. It ain't worked yet, though. Here comes another decade, I guess. Now that we're over something, let's, number 3, Undertale. I met Toby Fox at the 2014 Penny Arcade Expo. He later tweeted about beating me at my own game. I didn't even bother replying that if I'd lost, it was definitely because my teammate was some random deadbeat, and because his teammate was probably Michael Kerwin, the lead programmer of the game. Now, 5.5 years later, I would like to apologize and say I was having a bad weekend. It's hard to have a good weekend at the Penny Arcade Expo when you're demonstrating a deceptively complex and thus difficult to explain 2-on-2 multiplayer abstract sports game for 10 hours a day all by yourself in a booth with no one else to teach people how to play while you hike to the bathroom. I had seen his game on the internet, though I hadn't given it too much thought aside from I like the colors. Eventually, so many people had recommended Undertale to me that I decided to play it. My good friend Alex Jaffe, wanting nothing more apparently than to watch me stream all the way through the game, gifted it to me on Steam. I streamed it on Thanksgiving Day 2015. For several consecutive Thanksgivings in my neighborhood in Oakland, California, I indulged in a private tradition of fasting. I ate no food and drank no liquid, even water, for 24 hours. On the day I first streamed Undertale, I was already feeling special stress from a crunchy period late in the development of my own game. That stress and the dehydration combined to deflate my brain lining. My skull squeezed into itself. Tight hat-wearing feeling, I plunged into Undertale. Despite my best efforts to remain a pacifist, I accidentally killed Goat Mom. To say I had begun the exercise in a state would tantamount criminal understatement. Accidentally homicidalizing Goat Mom pushed me into a lake of my own making. Ultimately, I had to cut my stream short because the police called to say they'd found my stolen car, a 2007 Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor my friend had left me before moving to Portland. On the one hand, that car had been free. On the other hand, that car ended up costing me about $4,000. I picked up Undertale later. I played through it on my Twitch channel. You can view the entire playthrough on YouTube if you feel like it. Beneath the surface of Undertale, the morsely fossils of the ancient greatness of all old video games sleep. Sometimes loud and always warm, Undertale greeted me like a best friend, possessing the best video game soundtrack of the decade and perpetrating every fourth wall hugging magic trick video games have crouched sharpening since the antiquity of Earthbound. Undertale breathes with the simultaneous palpable exuberance of a YouTube video and the collected maturity of a professional poker player. Moments of sheer emotional honesty stud its cartoon exterior. Entertainment experiences so lush with feelings seldom exist in this world, and when they do, they often annoy persons less open to themselves. Undertale is thus perhaps the only game that can summarize this decade in which many teenagers decided that being good, open-minded, and compassionate was, in fact, pretty cool. Going off the script here for a second to say that what I wouldn't let myself type in this script is that Undertale made me feel like a slob and a jerk and a loser for never trying to make my own video game that was as lush and big and full of stuff as that, and I've always wanted to, and when I did make my own game, it was this extremely sterile, geometrical, preschool, industrial, clinical, scientific, engineering instrument of a thing. I've been writing short...
Now, you should know, that's not Stonehenge. That's a Moe head statue. You know, the one that... Don't you lecture me with your $30 haircut. Anyway, good to see that you're totally down with the chill vibes of this stream and you're not complaining at all whatsoever.
Short stories and novels since I was a teenager. I've written over 100 novels, and I don't show them to anybody anymore. I haven't shown anyone a piece of my fiction since literally 2003, though I continue to wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and spend about an hour writing, and then I don't show it to anybody. And I've just spent the last almost 3 years coming in here to this office every day and editing videos, staying late, not because anyone at the office expects me to. I stay late and edit videos for myself because I want to make something. I want to make stuff, and I want to fill my stuff with stuff. And I want to try to put something real in there, and then I keep not putting anything real in there, and I keep just putting on like some dumb, like cartoonish, over the top, like lecture voice, and I just feel like a jerk, and I feel like an insincere, ungenuine person, like all the time. And a game like Undertale just made me feel like, you know, you can kind of be a funny weirdo and also have so much of this genuine heart in there. And oops, bumped the microphone there. Yeah, you know. You know what I'm talking about. Let's go on to whatever the next one I've got. Number 2, Killer Queen. I first learned of Killer Queen 2 weeks before securing publisher funding for my own competitive multiplayer game. I encountered it in the form of a YouTube video of raw gameplay footage. I watched 1 minute of that footage, during which I perfectly understood every piece of the game's design. 2 teams of 5 players each contend on a single-screen arena at a pixel sport with 3 victory conditions. Number 1, fill all the hive holes with pollen. Number 2, assassinate the other team's queen 3 times. Number 3, ride a snail into a hockey goal on your team's side of the arena. Each team has 4 workers and 1 queen. Queens can fly and kill. Workers can upgrade themselves at upgrade stations, at which point they gain the ability to kill at the cost of their pollen gathering powers. The trinity of win conditions, combined with the omni-availability of all pertinent game status information, transforms the game until it transcends its obvious influences. Killer Queen is a game about looking at the screen. It is a game about looking in the right place at the right time. You can lose a game of Killer Queen exactly because you thought you were about to win. Killer Queen turns spectators into valuable players. A sudden crowd yell about the snail might snap a would-be champion back to their clutch senses. At the 2016 Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, California, I performed a 30-minute lecture on the subject of designing the hypothetical quote-unquote perfect sport. In this lecture, I closely detailed the design process of my own game before revealing the sudden twist that Killer Queen, in fact, was the perfect sport. Having regularly played the game with screaming crowds and sometimes reliable teammates at every opportunity these past 6 years, I still believe this. Killer Queen is the absolute best of the mid-2010s local competitive multiplayer independent game trend. Experiences with games like Samurai Gun, Towerfall, and Nidhogg rejuvenated me and my fellow developers regularly while we developed our own contender. I've heard those sorts of local multiplayer competitive games described as a fad, so thinking about Killer Queen right now, sitting here in front of this microphone, I gotta say, I don't think I have ever played a more nauseatingly stressful video game in my entire life. Online multiplayer and such is one thing. Though man, when people say local competitive multiplayer is where it's at, they are not messing around. So if I can make a wish, not a prediction, a wish about the 2020s, it would be this: that we might all just get off the internet, stop looking at our phones, and start looking at some TV screens and playing some video games of perfectly obviously legible visual presentation with our friends and loved ones. At this point, reveal the sudden twist that my game of the decade was in fact the video game I had made, Video Ball. I'm pretty sure someone in the comments would have yelled at me if I'd done that. Yet if I had done that, I would have expected at least a lot of you to understand. I spent 5 years of my life off and on performing calculations to mathematically perfect Video Ball's game design. I spent countless hours in meetings with publishers and potential investors, some of whom smelled like reptile oil, even over the phone. I personally playtested my game with rooms full of 4 players for a counted total of 2,800 hours over the course of the first year alone. I nearly died making Video Ball precisely because I refused to not make my favorite game. I could have gotten a job somewhere and worked on a game that was not my favorite game. Instead, I threw my whole life away to make my favorite game. So don't you dare even think about telling me that I can't call it my game of the decade. If you never played Video Ball, that's okay. If you would like to play it right now, well, you can purchase it on Steam, PlayStation 4, or Xbox One. If you would not like to pay for it, you're in luck, because we just finished developing Video Ball Final Tune Game of the Decade Edition, which is available for free starting today. Video Ball Final Tune Game of the Decade Edition is a pared-down, offline-only version of the original game. In Video Ball Final Tune Game of the Decade Edition, you're limited to just one arena, basic, and just one mode, 2-on-2. We've even added a custom graphical presentation unique to this version of the game. Also, because it's been bothering me for literally 3 years, we went ahead and made one enormous fundamental change to the game design. If you'd like a DRM-free digital download of Video Ball Final Tune Game of the Decade Edition for Windows PC, find me on Twitter. I'm 108. My DMs are open. Direct message me a photograph of yourself, 4 Windows PC compatible video game controllers, Xbox One controllers preferred, 4 humans, and some tenuous proof of your identity. I don't know, like your Twitter handle written on a piece of paper. Isn't that what people do? If your DM'd photograph meets all of these criteria, I will reply to you as immediately as possible with a download link. Do not expect a reply if you cannot satisfy all of the criteria. I will make no exceptions. And if you play Video Ball Final Tune Game of the Decade Edition and find yourself liking it enough to desire the full game, which does have online multiplayer, well, that's available on Steam, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. All sales of Video Ball go directly to the publisher and not me, until Video Ball recoups the publisher's investment. That will not happen because of of this YouTube video, I've seen the numbers. If you do decide to purchase Video Ball, know that some of the menus are a little bit broken. Game of the Decade Edition, however, leaves all of the menus out. My Video Ball Game of the Decade Edition reveal broke the 400-word average for my game segments, so I'm going to have to call that the second of my 3 wishes. I still have one of my 3 wishes left, so I'm going to plunk down a mulligan and tell you about some games that are not number 1 on my list. I played Spelunky on PC in 2008. I played Minecraft on PC in 2009. I'm sorry, numerology did not work out for these games. I set rules, and my rules are cruel. It was tempting to say No Man's Sky is the game of the decade because it serves as a case study in fans getting wildly angry and developers devotedly evolving a game post-release. The full narrative arc of No Man's Sky feels about as 2010s as anything. I thought about it for about 30 seconds and then decided the whole concept was a little too microscopy, even for me. The Last of Us is not number 1 on this list because while it luxuriously minutely refined the very idea of a AAA single-player action-adventure video game, games like God of War 2018 show us that its work is not done. And now, the number 1 game that is not number 1 on my list of the games of the decade 2010s edition, Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima announced Death Stranding in June of 2016 and released it in November of 2019. Conversation about Death Stranding loomed over the video game likers' pastime for the majority portion of the back half of this decade. For the front half of this decade, we can only presume that Hideo Kojima was taking notes. Furthermore, the game itself feels suspiciously like a mixtape of the 2010s in video game design and culture. Death Stranding had a massive social media leveraging hype cycle, community elements, asynchronous multiplayer, a shockingly open world, hilarious stream fail potential, jangling loose, jagged physics befitting an early access Steam game, a labyrinthine plot that insinuates social media is killing us, comically baroque survival mechanics befitting an early access Steam game. Furthermore, Death Stranding arrived auspiciously right in time for critics considering the close of the decade. I'm only gonna say this once. I do not like falling for stuff. I say you peeking around that corner, Kojima. I say you wanting my precious prize. Well, guess what, buddy? You ain't getting it. Kojima, let me put this politely. Heed my enunciation. Yes, more than any other game on this list, Death Stranding is a game of the decade. However, it is not the game of the decade. Because the game of the decade is Dark Souls. Since right around the time Dark Souls began existing, blog and video commenters began attacking critics for comparing any other game to Dark Souls. The urge to compare a game to Dark Souls lurks primal at the heart of any video game aficionado. To explain simply, Dark Souls contains modernized defamiliarizations of many molecular and atomic essences of video game design theory. Dark Souls' design stretches shadowy tentacles back into the past, infecting our memories of the old times. Metroid is like Dark Souls. Castlevania is like Dark Souls. Faxanadu is like Dark Souls. Legacy of the Wizard is like Dark Souls. And you know what? Prince of Persia is kind of like Dark Souls. Trickling down Dark Souls' enigmatic bulk, we find the lickable condensation of long ago evaporated video game feelings. When I asked Red Bull Esports' Golden Boy Grand Pooh Bear his favorite game of the decade, he said Spelunky HD. He didn't say Dark Souls, though what he said about Spelunky HD, rhetorically fittingly for this prose, reminded me of Dark Souls. It's incredible in that it's a game where you get better simply by playing it, not leveling up or acquiring items. And each item you do acquire comes with its own disadvantages, along with its benefits. Add in the massive amount of secrets and weird cryptic items, and multiple paths to victory, and you have, in my mind, one of the most perfect video games ever created. I'm so grateful I played Spelunky before starting to speedrun because it taught me patience and learning the mechanics of a game like no other. And those things are deeply important to becoming a great runner. The 2010s was a renaissance decade for speedrunning. We could define speedrunning as the practice of loving a game so much you decide to learn everything about it. it, which includes every possible way to play it, every possible way to navigate its spaces. What Grand Pooh Bear says about Spelunky, I say about Dark Souls, except for the part about it making me a great runner. I did once run 2 miles in 9 minutes and 58 seconds, though that was before even Demon's Souls came out. I only ran 2 6-minute miles this entire decade. Oh man. When I asked Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy creator Bennett Foddy to tell me about his game of the decade, he had this to say, literally, about Dark Souls. I can't think of another game this decade that caused such a huge and sudden shift in the tastes of game designers worldwide. Out of nowhere, suddenly every game became interested in async multiplayer. Suddenly, every game was steeped in lightly revealed mystery instead of overt lore. Suddenly, every game was indifferent to the player and only lightly tutorialized. That didn't happen because Dark Souls was a huge commercial success. It was a pretty slow burn. It happened because designers were captivated with the game's radical design. We've all heard of game design teams having a Dark Souls mention jar that's something like a swear jar. I believe this because people hate when you mention Dark Souls when you're playing any game that's not Dark Souls. I have seen idiots in my stream chat getting actually angry because I mentioned Dark Souls while playing a game that was not Dark Souls. It was Code Vein, which is pretty close to Dark Souls, man. So, declaring Dark Souls the game of the decade feels like the only opportunity I will ever have to avoid snippy comments for simply invoking its name. Perhaps the commenters' knee-jerk reactions hint at the true power of Dark Souls. To play a Souls game is to explore it in depth, to learn every tiny corner. To play a Souls game, you have to equip the patience to put the game before yourself. Playing a Dark Souls game correctly requires psychological mechanics not dissimilar to tender love. To play a Dark Souls game is to enter a romantic relationship with it. These jerky-kneed commenters are simply bristly at the reputation of their former lover. I played Demon's Souls in Japan in 2009. Many players worldwide played it in 2010. I played Dark Souls in 2011, though was unable to delve deeply because of work commitments. I may have dismissed Dark Souls tersely on podcasts between 2011 and the time I finally played it through alone in 2014. If I dismissed it, I probably did so the way one might ill-advisedly play hard to get. I did not have time for it, so I joked about it, so I felt better about not having time for it. I came all the way back around on Dark Souls 5 years ago, and I've stayed there. I've played every FromSoft game since. Each adds a new nuance to the harrowing intimacy of the game's formulas, yet Dark Souls, a pure revision of its contractually unrelated immediate predecessor, stands colossus tall as an archetype. I declared the original Gears of War the game of the 2000s. Many mocked my prophetic proclamations, though thinking back on them today, I feel pretty good. I had said that we would feel Gears of War's legacy in renewed heft and slowness in AAA video games. I said we would see new blossoming in linear level design and increased emphasis on encounter design. I said we would see an avalanche of more games built on engines whose names all players knew. Now here in 2019, we've seen the likes of God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Death Stranding, and The Last of Us. The most popular game on Earth, Fortnite, uses Unreal Engine 4, an engine whose development was pretty much indirectly paid for by sales of Gears of War, which showcased Unreal Engine 3. I might not have been 100% right, though you've got to admit, I was pretty close. Here at the end of 2019, we have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the first game that even internet commenters don't seem afraid of saying is like Dark Souls. I mean, it really is. It's like kindergarten Dark Souls. Thus, I speak my predictive dream for the 2020s. We will have more AAA single-player games with asynchronous multiplayer. We'll see intimacy continue to seep back into level design. It took nearly 10 years between Demon's Souls and Jedi Fallen Order, though now that we're here, soon everything will be so exactly like Dark Souls. Even Zelda. What will the game of the 2020s be? Will it be Cyberpunk 2077, or will it be the Final Fantasy VII Remake? I'm sure of exactly two things here in December of 2019. One is that there is no way all of the parts of the Final Fantasy VII Remake will be released before the end of 2029. The other is that I definitely will not be making another Games of the Decade YouTube video. In 10 years, I will either be 50 years old old, or I will be dead. And while I'm pretty sure that the next decade will find ample use for the video game critical opinions of a 50-year-old person, I feel strongly that that person will not be me. At any rate, let's not worry about that for the moment. That's at most 10 whole years from now. For today, we need to only focus on one thing, that I was born stupid. However, I will not die hungry. Video games forever, Kotaku.com. While I'm here, I might as well seize this opportunity to hand out the first decennial Bibby Membus Awards. Film of the decade goes to Under the Skin, directed by Jonathan Glazer, starring Scarlett Johansson. Television show of the decade goes to Nathan For You, created by and starring Nathan Fielder. Album of the decade goes to UMA by Wednesday Campanella. Well, that about wraps it up for the first decennial Bibby Membus Awards. See you all next time.
Alright, I think it's time to stop having videos on. For that whole entire thing, I've had my mic muted because I was just, not saying nothing. And I just didn't feel like saying nothing. I mean, I'm probably still not going to say nothing, but we'll see. You'll just hear chair creaking and squeaking. Where do I find these guys? Look all the way down there. What do you mean? I'm looking up something. It says 11:34. That's like right at the edge. That's weird. I don't believe you, person in the FF14 online discussion forum. Not really a forum, but still. What is down here? Nothing really. Surely I can't fish while I'm up here, right? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so apparently, because I looked up, like, how do I get this thing? As it turns out, I can't yet. So we gotta go unlock something else. Is it you? Maybe it's you. Okay. So it is you. Yeah. Spearfishing. Oh no, I have to talk to him here. Whoa, okay, spearfish. Teeming waters. It says a thing about teeming waters. I can use shark eye to identify the location. I can target the teeming waters and confirm. Jesus Christ. All these things. Yeah, gather a roll action. Fucking shit. Oh God. Calm down. Alright. Should I bond this? Actions and traits. Okay. So I think before, no. I was gonna say before we go back, we should go over there to Limsy and get a better gig. That ain't the case. We can just go over here. Limsy, Liminzy. Limser, Liminzer. Is there not a better one? Oh. This is literally the only one I got. Or can have, even. Okay. So, damn, I was gonna do this, but I gotta go to the bathroom, so, like, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's the stream. I know a whole lot of nothing happened. Yeah, that was kind of the point. Didn't really feel like trying, even more than normal, because I also have a video that I'm working on, like a short one, but you know, still takes up time. So, see you on Monday for a video game. See you later, everyone. Bye.